This podcast of the Equine Forum is brought to you by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program at the College of Business. It all begins in 15 seconds right after this word from our podcast sponsor.
The University of Louisville Equine Industry Program at the College of Business is now offering a graduate certificate, which can be completed in 15 or 30 weeks and be done as a standalone or used as 20% of your MBA. Classes at both the undergraduate and graduate level are forming now for August.
From the rail to your radio, this is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
And Super Sabre has gone clear now by 5 lengths as they race inside the final 16. Super Sabre is out in front for Calvin Burrell, giving chase. Williams Kitten, but the Kentucky Jockey Club goes to Super Sabre. A third win in the race for Calvin Burrell.
But here comes Caixa Electronica, mounting a final bid as they enter the final furlong. Man Over Matter's third. This one's for Phil, desperately trying to hang in there. But here comes the 7-year-old pro, Caixa Electronica, on by to take the lead and win the Fall Highway Handicap.
Welcome to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
Rachel Alexandra and Calvin Burrell, and they have now split the field and gone clear, and it is Rachel Alexandra. How impressive! Rachel Alexandra wins, and it's a second golden rod for winning jockey Calvin Burrell. Really, was there a second? It was daylight.
Mind That Bird has the seam and angles outside for Chantel Sutherland as they straighten into the lane. And it's Bear's Conductor. Mind That Bird. Stimulus Plan. Southern Exchange, not today. Here comes Mind That Bird to take on Bear's Conductor. To the outside, Red Leader's coming hard. Mind That Bird, a narrow lead. Mind That Bird, gallant in the gray.
Now, here's Mike Penna.
Good morning once again, everyone. It is post time for the show that launched a network. It is the Equine Forum, all presented by TwinSpires right here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Mike Penna, Baron in the backstretch. Happy to have you along for the ride over the next 3 hours, right up until 11 a.m. Eastern on Sirius 216, XM 204, affiliates in Lexington, Louisville, and across the country, and streaming worldwide and podcast on our website, horseracingradio.net. And don't forget, you can listen to podcasts of this show and all of our shows on our website or wherever you access your podcasts. Well, was the sport of thoroughbred racing better when handicap races were a part of it? I spent a lot of time thinking about this question in light of the Grade 3 Fall High Weight being contested at Aqueduct later today. And it's a topic I'm going to present to Dale Romans and Tim Wilkin when they join me in the final segment of today's show. I ask, they answer, coming up at 10:30 Eastern. I'm also going to discuss this very same topic with former trainer Chuck Simon, who is my guest in the first segment of today's show, in just about 13 minutes from right now, right around 8:15. I'll welcome Chuck to the program. Chuck goes back to the days of working with the great, legendary Alan Jerkins. And I'll talk to Chuck and get his thoughts on that same question. And I want to hear your opinion, too. So go to @HRRN on Twitter, Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook, or email the show. If you don't do social media, email me, mike@horseracingradio.net, and let me know your opinion. Was the sport of thoroughbred racing better when handicap races were a part of it? If you go to our social media pages, you'll be able to click yes or no. You can certainly weigh in with any comments or opinions that you have. And if you go to the email, just send me your thoughts. That is today's poll question. The Fall High Weight has been won by some really notable horses over the years. In 1945, True North won the Fall High Weight. Now has a stakes race named in his honor. Hall of Fame filly Tawi won the race in both 1969 and again in 1970. King's Bishop won the race in 1973. And the filly Honorable Miss added the Fall High Weight to her resume in both 1975 and 1976. When Tawi won the race for the second time in 1970, she carried 140 pounds. She gave up 19 pounds to the runner-up. Let me say that again. She carried 140 pounds. Forget about a filly allowance, right? She carried 140 pounds, 19 pounds more than the runner-up. And to put that in perspective for you, this year's renewal of the fall high weight has 2 co-high weights. Factor It In and Runnin' Son of a Gun. They're both co-high weights carrying 132 pounds, 8 pounds less than the filly Tawi carried back in 1970. But here's the rub. Factor It In and Runnin' Son of a Gun, even though they're co-high weights, they only give up 9 pounds to the horse carrying the lowest weight of 123 pounds. That's 30-1 long shot Bezos. And the concept, the idea behind the handicap races was that the horses who were considered to be the more likely winners, the favorites in the race, were weighted higher than the long shots to give the long shots to make it a more even playing field. Now, I understand the sport is much, much different today, just like every sport. You take the NFL, you take the NBA, you take Major League Baseball, you look at all of the different changes and tweaks that have been done to the sport over the year. It's very difficult to compare teams, players, horses from different generations. And the game is different today. So I get that there would be a massive outcry if you were to put 140 pounds on Factor It In or Runnin' Son of a Gun later today. But the fact that they're only giving up 9 pounds to the horse with the least likely chance, and let's face it, he's 30-1 on the morning line, kind of a joke. It's not really a true handicap type of race. But was racing better when handicap races were a part of it? I started doing some homework on the topic, too, and I found data that was in an article, and the data came from the American Racing Manual, which pointed out that Seabiscuit carried 130-plus pounds 13 times over the course of his career. Dr. Fager carried more than 130 pounds in each of his final 8 races of his career, including 139 pounds in the final race. That was the Vosburg, which he went on to win by 6 lengths. Forgo, remember Forgo? Carried more than 135 pounds 9 times in his career. He was only victorious in 2 of those races, by the way, but he did carry it 9 times. Damascus ran in 6 consecutive races where he carried 133, 131, 130, 134, 134, and 133 pounds. He won 3 of those 6 races with those high imposts. The great John Henry carried 130 pounds in the 1982 Big Cap, the Santa Anita Handicap, and in the 1981 Hollywood Gold Cup. And how about Affirmed, a little bit more recently, if you will? Carried 132 pounds in the 1979 Hollywood Gold Cup, a race that he ended up winning by 3/4 of a length. And then there was Cigar. You want to go more recent? Here you go. Cigar carried 130 pounds in back-to-back races in 1996. You had the Mass Cap and then the Citation Challenge. That's the way handicap racing used to be. But I'm throwing it out there this morning. I want to hear your opinion. Was racing better when handicap races were a part of it? At HRRN on Twitter, Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook, or email me your thoughts, Mike at horseracingradio.net, and I will try to get to all of those responses later in the program. Again, I'll talk about that with Dale and Tim coming up 10:30 Eastern on I Ask, They Answer. That is one of several topics I will present to them. They're also going to have a special remembrance of trainer Angel Penna Jr., who passed away on Tuesday. He was suffering from dementia and I believe 74 years old. And that's a big loss for so many people in the sport. So many people were so kind on social media, posting beautiful things about Angel Penna Jr. Many people have asked me over the years if we were related because of the same last name, same spelling. We were not. Matter of fact, I never even had the chance to meet Angel Penna Jr. But I wish I had because of some of the things that I've read about him and some of the things that have been said. He sounds like he was a pretty cool dude. So we'll do that. We'll talk about that with Dale and Tim coming up, too. And again, Chuck Simon kicking off the show with me to talk about this new era with really no handicap races. Those have gone by the wayside. I'll talk to Chuck coming up at 8:15. Coming up at 8:35 in the second segment here in the first hour, Woodbine handicapper Jeff Bratt will be with me to talk about the Gray Stakes and the Mazarine Stakes later today north of the border. He'll have his thoughts there. Unsung Heroes, presented by Woodbine, comes up at 9 o'clock. I'm going to welcome Sammy Almaraz, who is now working for Tom Van Berg as his assistant. Tom joined me on Trainer Talk for a full hour this past Wednesday night. And if you haven't heard it, go back and listen to the podcast. He spends a lot of time crediting Sammy for his success and for his father's success. Sammy Almaraz has worked with the Van Berg family. I'm talking about the Hall of Famer, the late Hall of Famer Jack Van Berg, has worked with that family for more than 40 years. And Tom had some wonderful things to say about him. So today, he will be here in person as my unsung hero at 9 o'clock Eastern. 9:35, you'll want to stay tuned for this one, too. It's going to be good. Kentucky Senator Damon Thayer will be with me. He has an update on all the great things happening with Kentucky racing. You've noticed the purses at Churchill Downs and at Keeneland and Kentucky Downs. Massive purses this year, and it's going to continue to be that way. He'll give you an update, and he'll tell you why that is the reason. He also has some really interesting takes, maybe a bit controversial, on HISA and on Flightline, the Breeders' Cup Classic winner. So stay tuned for that, 9:35. You won't want to miss what Damon has to say. 10 o'clock Eastern, the TwinSpires Triple play. That's how Hour 3 begins, and it begins with James Scully. He'll give you 3 races you can keep an eye on later today. Kurt Becker Stroll Through Racing History comes up at 10:20. And then again, at 10:30, final segment of the show, I ask, they answer with trainer Dale Romans and turf writer Tim Wilkin. That is all ahead on a loaded edition of the Equine Forum presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Life is good. 9 wins from 11 career starts, including 4 Grade 1s. WinStar President and CEO Elliot Walden knows he's special.
You know, to have a horse of this caliber, it's always exciting. There's not many horses that I've been around that have his ability. You know, he just breathes a different air.
They're coming past the 16th fold. It's Life is Good. And this colt is incredible.
Life is Good is looking good. Life is Good and Irad Ortiz Jr. They ran him off their feet in the Pegasus.
And they're coming for the finish. It is Life is Good still in front. Life is Good is the winner by 2 lengths. Life is Good the leader with a 16th to the finish. And Life is Good is going to win this Woodward. Life is Good by 1.5 lengths at the end.
Life is Good, the fastest son of Into Mischief, coming to WinStar.
Action-packed horse racing is on the card this December at Gulfstream Park. Live racing Wednesday through Sunday. There's plenty to bet on with weekly stakes races, the return of turf racing, and jockeys and trainers from all across the country. Enjoy the races outdoors at the new Carousel Club or cool off in our private suites or the Trackside Restaurant 10 Pub. For stake schedules, tickets, and reservations, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
The thrill of world-class racing continues at Toronto's Woodbine Racetrack. Kick off the weekend's action with Twilight Racing each Thursday evening at 4:50 p.m. Eastern, followed Friday, Saturday, and Sunday programs beginning at 1:10 p.m. Eastern. With racing now through December 11th and plenty of weekend stakes, you are not going to want to miss the action at Woodbine. For wagering updates, handicapping tips, racing news, and more, visit woodbine.com. That's woodbine.com.
Hi, this is Calvin Burrow. You're listening to the Horse Racing Radio Network.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN. Presented by TwinSpires.
Turning for home, it's affirmed on the inside. By a head, Sir Lad is second. By a head, Text is third on the outside. By 2 lengths, Farnesio is fourth, and True Statement into the stretch. It's Text on the outside. By a head, Sir Lad is second. By a head, affirmed third. Now coming on again on the rail. Now it's affirmed in front. By a half length, Sir Lad is second, and Text. Affirmed drawing out. Affirmed and Sir Lad and Text. And affirmed is the winner by half length. Sir Lad second by 3.5 with Text finishing third.
Welcome back to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires, right here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Mike Penna, Baron in the backstretch with you right up until 11 a.m. Eastern. And how about that? Whenever you can work in, I say this a lot about Dan Loisel and his call from Woodbine. You heard that in the open of the show. But whenever you can work in Harry Henson, that gravelly delivery, and affirmed winning the 1979 Hollywood Gold Cup, pretty cool stuff. And affirmed carried 132 pounds when he won the Hollywood Gold Cup that day. And it leads me in to my next topic with my next guest, who is former trainer Chuck Simon. I'm going to talk to Chuck momentarily about handicap races. Is the sport, and that's our poll question today, if you're just joining me, I threw it out there at the top of the show, is the sport, or was the sport better when handicap races were a part of it? You can go to social media at HRRN, on Twitter, Horse Racing Radio Network, on Facebook, or you can email the show, Mike at horseracingradio.net, with your opinion. Patty sends an email to the show and says yes to handicap races. Patty, a big fan. I kind of have to agree. I think when you had those weight discrepancies and you were asking a horse to carry a high weight and putting a lower weight on a horse that's considered to be a long shot, like we see in today's fall high weight, sometimes there were 19 and 20 and 22 pound spreads trying to even out the field so that all the horses, in theory, would hit the wire together. And I think that carrying that weight really differentiated a good horse from a great horse in a lot of ways. Chuck Simon with me now. Chuck, former trainer, worked with Alan Jerkins. He knows a thing or two about being around horses that could carry weight, and he is now the host of the Going in Circles Racing podcast. Chuck, good morning, my friend.
Hey, Michael. How are you?
I am doing really well, and I'm excited to talk about this topic with you. And I spent a lot of time working on some stats and some thoughts when I looked at the fall high weight at Aqueduct today. And look, you have 2 horses in that race that are co-high weights, and they give up only 9 pounds to the horse that is the lowest weighted horse in the race. And yes, I understand it's today's version of a handicap race, but boy, how times have changed, huh?
They sure have. One thing that racing doesn't do great is history. It's amazing that people don't realize these days how different things are from just 30 years ago. I'm not talking about 1920. 25 years ago, things have changed dramatically, and handicap racing, unfortunately, is one of the things that we basically sacrificed, because the handicaps that we have today are barely handicaps. And I'm not blaming the racing secretaries, the current racing secretaries, because it's just a different way of looking at races compared to how it used to be. And it's unfortunate, and I think that anyone that was around during the era, the last great era of handicap racing, would certainly vote yes on your poll question. But I think a lot of people just don't even understand that how prevalent handicap racing was in this country, not that long ago.
Yeah, it's a great point. I pointed out in my opening comments that when Tawi, the Hall of Fame filly, won her second consecutive fall high weight in 1970, Chuck, she carried 140 pounds. She gave up 19 pounds to the runner-up that day. Isn't that incredible?
It is. And, just doing a little bit of quick research. And I recommend, if anybody really wants to know about the great horses of the past, because the video beyond. There's a lot of video on YouTube of great horses, but without PPs, it's hard for someone who doesn't really know much about a horse. Maybe they might recognize the name, like people recognize the name Forgo. And I was very, very young when Forgo was running, so I really wasn't able to appreciate that at the time. But when you look at his PPs now, it's almost comical when you see the amount of weight that he carried. And one thing that I noticed that I had kind of forgotten was that almost all of the older horse races for fillies and for open were handicap races. Mm-hmm. I mean, you go through their careers, and the one race that sticks out as not being a handicap was the Jockey Club Gold Cup, which was a weight for age. And that's it's funny because a horse like Forgo, his last few years of racing, he never carried less than 130 or 135, 137, and he gave up, like you were saying earlier. In the 1977 Nassau, he carried 136. The horse who ran second, a horse named Co-Host, carried 110. I mean, these are like, just kind of crazy numbers to see. He gave, in the Marlboro Cup in 76, Forgo gave Honest Pleasure, who was a good horse, a top 3-year-old. He gave him 18 pounds. He carried 137. Honest Pleasure carried 119.
Wow.
And I think that we should, talk about the reason that the handicaps went away for the most part. And it was a flawed idea that was basically, the people with the best horses didn't like it. And we also have to remember, that the game itself, the entire game, looking from a global view, the bloodstock portion of our business was different back then. And, it seems though today that, and this is not a criticism, it's just the difference, is that our horses, our best horses now, they audition for the bloodstock market during the racing career.
Yeah.
And that started maybe 20 years ago, or maybe a little longer, a little less, but people with best horses complained. Bobby Frankel was really sharp guy, and he knew how to get an edge for himself. And he would tell racing secretaries, "I'm not running your race if you make me carry X amount of weight, or if I have to give this amount of weight." And he had a lot of star horses, and they conceded. And eventually, people came up with the theory that we shouldn't penalize our star horses, and that if we didn't have handicaps, they'd race more, which has proven to be completely 180-degree mistake, because that hasn't happened at all. And the handicap portion of the races really wasn't affecting that many horses. But it is a shame, because it's one of those things that it basically can't come back at this point. I mean, you could have more handicaps, but you're never going to get the weight carriers of the past. And I remember New York had a rule, and I think a lot of people don't remember this rule, but they had a rule that in a handicap, a horse, the high weight for the handicap, had to have 126 pounds or more. It was a mandatory high weight, it was called. Mm-hmm. So even if horses who were carrying less were entered in the race, someone had to be assigned 126, and then the weights were worked off of that horse. And eventually they did away with that rule because, again, people complained about carrying so much weight. And, we get to now where we have handicap races, and not the fall highway, which they still kind of carry a little bit more. But, you see handicap races where the spread of weight between the horses is 3 pounds. And, some horses go off 40 to 50 to 1 in those races. How can they be getting 3, 4, 5 pounds? What was the Met Mile this year? Uriah St. Louis's horse. He should have been he should have gotten 20 pounds from Flightline, I think he got like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
That was, in the old days, he'd have carried 108 or 107. Not that there's that many jocks that can do it anymore, but that's just an example of really how, it morphed into what we have now. And, the handicap races, I made a statement after the Breeders' Cup that I really thought that, Flightline didn't have many more worlds to conquer. And I got a lot of heat from her, of course. But, my point was that who's out there for him to really beat? Who's out there you can say to yourself, if that horse runs his best race, there didn't seem to be anybody. And in the conversation, I said, if this was the old days where we were still carrying weight, and I would love to see Flightline against a horse like Proxy. Flightline against Proxy on equal weights, nobody gives Proxy a prayer, right?
Yeah.
But if Flightline carried 138 and Proxy carried 115,
correct.
All of a sudden, that race is a compelling race. Obviously, we know it's never going to happen. But,
what's the saying, Chuck? Weight could stop a train, right? That's what it always came back to when we talked about these handicap races and the horses that carried that much weight. So let me go that direction with you then. So should we view Flightline? Forget about the fact that he's only had 6 lifetime starts, and people are saying he's as good as Secretariat and Man of War and all those things that I think are just outrageous. But he's fantastic. But can we really put him in that category after just 6 starts? But let's just say, can we compare Flightline? Should we compare Flightline to horses like Forgo, John Henry, Dr. Fager, Damascus, that carried the weight and proved that they could win giving up significant amount of weight to their rivals?
No. I mean, you can't. I mean, clearly his peak races were spectacularly good, but availability is still the number one ability for a lot of in a lot of ways. You want to compare any of his races to Secretary's Belmont. Secretary's Belmont was the 3rd race in 5 weeks for the horse in 3 different states.
Yeah.
So it's hard to compare. I guess it's almost like comparing boxers. The old days, Sugar Ray Leonard had Joe Louis had the Bum of the Month Club. He'd fight a guy every month. But nowadays, you're lucky if the guys fight once a year. So things have changed. But I mean, Flightline to me is a unique horse in that we more or less only saw, peak races from him. He was primed for a set of particular races, and he went out there and he dominated them.
Yeah.
But Flightline was never winning a Triple Crown. I mean, he's, to think that a horse that needed, that much time off in between races would have been able to compete in that series, it never would have happened. And had he been, had he not had all his issues, might he have been on the Triple Crown Trail? You would guess that he would have been, but hell, you have to earn points to get into the Derby nowadays. So, unless you win a big point prep, which is held, close to the Derby, I don't know. I mean, it's just, to me, it's apples and oranges, and he has his own unique, racing. It's not easy to run every 3 months either, and every 3, 4 months, 5 months, and be at your peak. So, I mean, he certainly is great, but I just don't see how you can possibly compare him to horses like Spectacular Bid, who raced almost as much the first half of his 4-year-old year as Flightline did over 2 years. So,
yeah, no, you absolutely cannot. I agree with you 100%. And look, in Flightline's defense, he did not choose those races. He did not choose those spots. So we don't know what would have happened if he had been healthy and he had made the road to the Kentucky Derby, and maybe he would have rolled through the Triple Crown and he would have won the Belmont by 40 lengths. Who knows? We don't know that. We never will. But he had his schedule. He ran his races. But coming back to what we see with the handicap races, kind of going the way of the dodo bird, if you will. Does this tie in, Chuck, to, and by the way, visiting with Chuck Simon, former trainer, now host of the Going in Circles Racing podcast. Chuck, does this tie into the fact that we look at horses now as being more fragile and not being able to carry these type of in-posts, and we want to space out their races more than what they used to do in the old days? Is this a big reason, too, that we may never see any type of true handicap racing again?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's a factor. And, like we had talked about earlier, it's not like we can just say, okay, next year they're all going to be handicaps, and we're gonna start packing weight on horses. We're gonna make you prove it. It's just not going to happen. I mean, it's just those days are past, and they were great, but we can't go back to them. It wouldn't bother me to see a race like the Met Mile, which is kind of a singularly unique race, and everybody wants to win it. And if that race was a race where maybe we handicapped it a little bit more, a little stronger, put it that way, where the better horses, were forced to earn it a little bit more. But I mean, that's probably not going to happen either. But it's just I think if you ever get people out there, get a book, order it. It's on Amazon. All the places have it. I'm sure in Lexington there's a bunch of places that have it. But it's called Champions. DRF produced it years ago, and they've had a couple updates. But it essentially gives the PPs, the past performances for every great champion, to the 1900s, and it's really a great book, an enlightening book, and you probably will get a better history lesson just looking up horses and seeing what they did than pretty much anything else out there.
Yeah, you started, Chuck, by saying that one thing racing does poorly is history and remembering the history. And I know that so much what we do is based on tradition, and that's great that we maintain a lot of those traditions, but educating people on the history of the sport is a massive thing, in my opinion, and I think we can do a better job of letting people know where the sport was and where it is today. And I really appreciate you taking time to visit with me here. Again, you can catch Chuck on his Going in Circles Racing podcast. Chuck, I have about 30 seconds before I have to get to the break. Where can people listen, and when's the next one coming out?
We tape on Monday nights, so either late Monday night or early Tuesday, and any of the big podcast hosts is covering. Just punch in Going in Circles podcast, and my lovely face will pop up.
Hey, wait a minute. If you're on podcast or on radio, you're supposed to have that face for radio. You're not supposed to have your face out there.
I might have doctored a little bit.
I appreciate it, brother. Thanks so much for taking time, and all the best, my friend. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, great stuff from Chuck Simon here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. All right, coming up next, I'm going to get to a short break here. When I come back, going to be joined by Jeff Bratt, the handicapper at Woodbine. He's going to walk you through some of the big races coming up later today, including the Gray Stakes and the Mazarine. And the Gray Stakes has a pretty remarkable history, and Jeff will fill us in on that when we come back as well. That's next, right after your Legends of the Turf.
This is a capsulized story of a man who was born in New York City on April 17, 1876. He graduated from Groton, Harvard, and Harvard Law. He inherited his 2,500-acre farm near Bowie, Maryland, and at first loaned out his stables. As his interest and involvement grew, he began breeding and racing horses in his renowned silks, White, Red Spots, Scarlet Cap. He became a prominent banker and sportsman and raced not only with enormous success in this country, but with recognized success in England as well. He bred the vast majority of the horses he raced, most of them at A.B. Hancock's Claiborne Farm near Paris, Kentucky. His own farm in Maryland was devoted mostly to the care of weanlings and as winter quarters for his racing stock. In addition to the success his horses enjoyed on the racetrack, he was equally as well known for the support he steadfastly afforded to measures meant to benefit breeding and racing and to keep the sport on a high plane. In 1935, when he was a guest of the Thoroughbred Club of America in Lexington, Kentucky, he was quoted as saying, quote, "I am very anxious to see the day before I shuffle off this mortal soil when the English will recognize our American stud book in its entirety," end of quote. He raced some of the very best horses in England, thereby showcasing the class of American bloodlines. His primary objective was a victory in the Epsom Derby, a goal he never achieved, sad to relate, but his horse, Prince Simon, was second by a head to Galcador in 1950. His horses won the Kentucky Derby, indeed. Gallant Fox in 1930, Omaha 1935, Johnstown in 1939. Gallant Fox and Omaha both went on to win the Triple Crown. Johnstown barely missed all three jewels by running fifth to Chaladon in the Preakness. Among other racing standouts carrying his colors to the winner's circle were Fairno, Apache, Fenelon, Bonnie Beryl, Granville, Gaffaman, and Vagrancy. He was known as a man of utterly remarkable energy and often climbed out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning to watch his horses work out under the eye of one of the legends of thoroughbred racing, Sonny Jim Fitzsimmons, who trained for him for 30 years. In the world of business, he was the president of New York's Hanover National Bank from 1910 to 1929, and after a merger, chairman of the board of Central Hanover Bank and Trust. His career as a banker had incepted in 1903 after having served 2 years as secretary to the American ambassador in Great Britain. One of the most markedly important contributions to American breeding was his partnership venture with Marshall Field, R.A. Faburn, and A.B. Hancock, importing the great stallion Sir Galahad III from France in 1925, a stallion who became tremendously influential on and a cornerstone, I might add, of American breeding. This particular man was quoted in 1935 as follows, quote, "I believe in changes if they mean advancement and improvement, but as a sports writer friend of mine complimented me by calling me a gentleman of senile virility, I think I may say that the advancing age of the turf is an asset rather than a liability," end of quote. The man herein being profiled was indeed a man of wisdom, foresight, and unqualified personal integrity, and was a man whose racing colors still burned brightly on the pages of racing history: white, red spots, scarlet cap. He was Mr. William Woodward.
Race the TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Life is good. 9 wins from 11 career starts, including 4 Grade 1s. WinStar President and CEO Elliot Walden knows he's special.
You know, to have a horse of this caliber, it's always exciting. There's not many horses that I've been around that have his ability. You know, he just breathes a different air.
They're coming past the 16th fold. It's Life is Good. And this colt is incredible.
Life is Good is looking good. Life is Good and Irad Ortiz Jr. They ran him off their feet in the Pegasus.
And they're coming for the finish. It is Life is Good still in front. Life is Good is the winner by 2 lengths. Life is Good the leader with a 16th to the finish. And Life is Good is going to win this Woodward. Life is Good by 1.5 lengths at the end.
Life is Good, the fastest son of Into Mischief, coming to WinStar.
Family run since 2001, Mulholland Springs has established a reputation for raising, selling, and racing top-class horses with a high level of individual care and attention to detail for each horse.
Pony Express wins the Clark.
Never retreats, takes the First Lady.
It's Malibu Mint, and they take the Grade 1 Princess Rooney.
And Tell Me No Lies has won the Chandelier, and Cave Rock to win by almost 6 lengths in the American Pharoah.
Visit us at mulhollandsprings.com.
New to Coolmore America for 2023 is Jack Christopher. A son of topsire Munnings and a 3-time Grade 1 winner, Jack Christopher was an 8 3/4 length winner on debut at Saratoga at 2 before winning the Grade 1 Champagne with a whopping 102 Beyer. His 3-year-old campaign included wins in the Grade 2 Pat Day Mile, the Grade 1 Woody Stevens by 10 lengths, and the Grade 1 H. Allen Jerkins. Jack Christopher stands at an introductory fee of $45,000. Call the team at Ashford today to book your mare before he fills up.
Hi, this is Doug O'Neill. My favorite radio show is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
They come to the top of the stretch in the gray. Big Bazinga is running big. And it's Big Bazinga. In front by 2 lengths, Amise Holiday is finishing hard now. Here comes Amise Holiday. Big Bazinga digs down deep, but Amise Holiday on the outside joins Big Bazinga. Amise Holiday ran down Big Bazinga to win the gray. Big Bazinga game second, Gold Greeley finished third.
the legendary Dan Loisel with the call of the 2013 running of the Gray Stakes at Woodbine. Amise Holiday getting the victory, and Amise Holiday would go on to a brilliant career after that victory at 2. And there have been several horses that come through the Gray Stakes and go on to do some big things, including, you might remember, Kentucky Derby winner Mind That Bird, who took the Gray Stakes in his 2-year-old campaign. And the Gray being renewed later today at Woodbine along with the Mazarine Stakes. It's a huge day of racing north of the border. And to tell you more about it, I welcome in Woodbine handicapper Jeff Bratt here on the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Jeff, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. It's actually going to be an unseasonably warm day in Toronto, so I'm very much looking forward to it. We've had our first snowfall. That has now melted, so we're good to go for today's 11-race program.
First snowfall. Look, we're not even into December yet. I don't want to be hearing about first snowfalls.
Welcome to Canada, my friend, especially Toronto, where the weather changes every 5 minutes.
Yeah, it does, and I'm glad it's going to be a beautiful day because you have those 2 outstanding stakes races. And let's just start, Jeff. I mentioned a couple of big names, Mind That Bird, Amise Holiday. There have been some tremendous horses to come through these races and go on to do big things in their career.
Yeah, you're right about that. And it's kind of been all over the place in terms of scheduling, too. It used to be earlier in the season, and they moved it later in the year as well. And we have seen some big horses win this race in the past. I was actually looking back at last year, this race and the Mazarine, the girl equivalent. And while the winners of these races from last year have not had great success this season, the also-rans have done very well this year. So it's not only the winners that traditionally do very well, but it's horses that maybe finish second, third, and fourth that also do some good things next year as well.
Yeah, and folks will be treated to Robert Geller's call later this afternoon. You heard Dan Loisel coming out of the break, and I said this earlier, whenever you can work in calls from people like Dan Loisel, you have to do it because he had such a unique voice, and I know he's missed up there in Canada at Woodbine. Racing fans are certainly missing him, but he's one of the best that ever did it.
Oh, great guy, too. He still gives me a hard time pretty much on a weekly basis via text. So he likes to give me a hard time from time to time. But, Danny's a great guy. I'm lucky to call him a very good friend. And, he always brought up the crescendo in a race call. He kind of reminded me a little bit of a Dirk. And, always brought it. It started off at a low cadence and then really brought the excitement throughout the race call. So, we miss Danny. But we're very lucky to have Robert, too. 2 totally different types of callers. But we've been very blessed to have some great race callers at Woodbine.
Yeah, and 2 people very passionate about the sport of thoroughbred racing. We'll talk about today's stakes races in a moment, but before we do, I want to just ask you about this past meet, this summer into the fall. One horse that stands out to me when I think about Woodbine 2022 is Moira, and the Queen's Plate winner, so brilliant, and proved that she was no fluke that day, and she was so good leading up to the Queen's Plate. What moments are going to stand out to you when you think back on the meet here in 2022?
Yeah, she's obviously right there in the mix of things for sure. She's kind of had some ebbs and flows in her season because everything was going great until the E.P. Taylor, and then she just had bad racing luck in that race. She probably deserved a little bit better than what she got on that particular occasion, and she was eventually disqualified for causing interference. And then she gets a bad draw in the Breeders' Cup, and she was just too far off the pace on that day. She came with a bit of a run there, but at least she showed that she belongs. At least she shows that she's competitive against the best of the best. I think next season she's going to be even better. And I think another storyline for me, Mike, would be the presence of Canadian-based horses in the Breeders' Cup. Like Cheryl Spite, with a little more luck, maybe beats Modern Games. Mm-hmm. Then you have Liddy Spitespear. She ran great for Roger. She finished third in her race. Cairo Consort ran well to finish in the third-place position. All these horses from Woodbine that went down there, they were big prices, but they all ran well. So that's kind of one of the themes for me, too, as well, just to see that, our horses belong on the big stage as well. So I was pretty proud of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was great to see, and I know it's going to continue into next year as well. 11 races carded for today. I'm visiting with Woodbine handicapper Jeff Bratt, who is going to walk through a couple of the stakes races for you. The 2 big ones, the Gray Stakes and the Mazarine. The Gray, a Grade 3, it's going to be contested as race number 3 on the 11-race program. It's a 7-horse field, mile and a 16th on the all-weather, and the favorites role is going to go to Hal, but Bluebirds Over ships in from Florida for trainer Safi Joseph Jr. Is it Hal and everybody else, or are there some others in here that people should keep an eye on?
Well, the problem is that Mark Casse has cross-entered fillies in the gray. So essentially what he's done is he's gained a free look-see at both races, right? So he's entered some of the fillies in the Mazarine. He's entered them in the gray as well. So I'll tell you this much. I don't know what race Forever Dixie's going in, but she's a talented filly. And she did not have a great trip last time out in the Glorious Song Stakes when finishing second. She's out of a mare that did a lot of good things. In fact, I won the Prince of Wales Stakes, as a matter of fact, against the boys. So that family line is no stranger to being the boys. In terms of Hal, here's a bit of an interesting story, Mike. I was talking to the Connections. He was a total mess when he came in because he was so studdish that eventually they had to cut him. And now he's so mature now. He's so laid back now. I think he's going to have no problem going around the two turns. The replay in regards to Bluebird's Over that is so intriguing is he was really ranked going around the first turn at Gulfstream, and rarely do 2-year-olds overcome that when they're fighting the rider and they don't really want to settle. Not only did he settle, he won big. He won by a massive margin as well. So I think he's focused in on the two key contenders in that race. I'm just taking Hal because I think he's a little bit more seasoned at this point. But, man, that was an impressive first career start for Bluebird's Over.
Yeah, very, very impressive. And as you said, drew off to win by 8 lengths that day. Of the long shots, are there a couple that you say, all right, if things break their way, maybe they have the ability to pull this thing off?
That would be Motourist for me on the inside. I think he beat a really good field. The third-place finisher came back and ran okay yesterday here at Woodbine, but the way that Motourist did it, like he just drew off on that occasion. It was the first time going around 2 turns. And I just was really impressed with how he ran that particular occasion. The one thing that you're going to find with conditioner Kevin Attar, we were just speaking about Moira too, is he's got fantastic stats going from a sprint to a route. So there's 2 angles I love to play for Kevin if you're watching races at Woodbine. Kevin with 2-year-old second time out, and Kevin going from a sprint to a route. Both massive angles that I like to play, and Motourist now gets to put consecutive route races together. So I think that Motourist has got a shot as well to pull off an upset there in the third.
Yeah, what's the stats on a second route race after?
That I don't know.
Yeah, and the rail draw going a mile and 16th on the all-weather shouldn't be an issue, maybe an advantage?
No, the rail, I would say for about 3 weeks there at Woodbine, not so much now, but for about 3 weeks, the rail was absolutely golden. And it's still not a bad place to be. It's been more of a neutral racing strip as of late, but the rail's been fantastic. And I don't know, I find in Tapeta races, they say this a lot, they kind of echo turf races. Ground saved is just such a key. So if Raffy can just get this horse, you would think a ground-saving trip from the inside, that might go a long way.
So who wins it? Is it Hal?
I'm going towards Hal. Towards Hal, yeah. And the Connections have actually made hats. They say, what the Hal? And I think that's kind of cool that, what's your horse's name? His name's Hal. So I'm going to go towards Hal as my top pick there in the third.
All right, fantastic. That's the gray. The filly counterpart is the Grade 3 Mazarine Stakes, which is going to go as race number 10 on the 11-race program. Same distance, mile and the 16th on the all-weather. Maybe a bit more contentious running, would you say? Or is that?
I would agree.
Yeah, okay. So how'd you see this one?
So I know that I was talking to Mark Casse after Rider won, and she took a lot of money on that day, and he said, listen, you haven't seen the best of her as of yet. She's way better than what she showed us. So it was kind of just like it's one of those things where if you watch the replay, like the light bulb just went off halfway down the stretch, and she's like, oh, I got to go on and win this race, and she did, and she won by a length. So I think she's pretty nice. Obviously, Safi Joseph's got another representative in here, that being Oddity Lady, who looks rather intriguing, too. If Forever Dixie goes in here, I am going to go towards Forever Dixie as my top pick in this spot. I hope she goes here. I'm all over the Cassie horse in this spot. 2-3. Renegade Rebel is going to be my second selection as well. Renegade Rebel really did excel with the stretch and distance last time out, but Forever Dixie, for me, as I mentioned earlier on, the Glorious Song Stakes, just did not have a great trip on that day. You did not want to be coming from off the pace on the outside on that particular occasion, and that's exactly where she found herself.
Yeah, it seems like Mark has so many major players in those 2 races that it's almost difficult for him to keep them separated. So
yeah.
I wouldn't shock me if he goes in the Gray Stakes with Forever Dixie because he's just trying to keep her away from these other top fillies.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the luxuries, too. I mean, it obviously costs you more money to enter in both races, but the fact that you get to handicap for, 72 hours, the draw is 72 hours out. So, I mean, it's kind of advantageous from that point of view, and I'm just kind of trying to come up with an analogy in here. It's like, the New York Yankees of horse racing, right? You have all these nice horses, all these nice athletes, and you kind of get to pick your spots. So it's a great scenario to be in, that's for sure.
There's another Hall of Famer represented in that race, not just Mark Casse, but you have Josie Carroll, who sends out State of Mind, the 2-year-old daughter of Kitten's Joy. She broke her maiden last time out on the synthetic, 1.70 yards. Do you give her much of a shot?
I do. I probably haven't given her enough respect, to be perfectly honest with you in here. I actually liked her when she won last time out, and she kind of came from an impossible spot to do so. I think for her to win, Mike, she's going to need a little bit of a pace to be set up front. And you tend to get that with 2-year-olds, especially those that are going from a sprint to a rail for the first time. You might get a pretty hotly contested race in this spot. So State of Mind might be able to pull off the win in here. I'll tell you what, Elle and Jay Foxwoods, they have been supporting Woodbine on a more regular basis as of late. We've got a lot of nice Carroll runners up here. They've got a horse coming up tomorrow in the Candy Road by the name of Striker that's got a big shot as well. So, I mean, they obviously have horses that are very nice all around the world, but we're thrilled to have them with us here at Woodbine as well.
Yeah, first post today at Woodbine, 1:20 Eastern. Again, 11 races. Those 2 Grade 3s highlight the program. Jeff, is there any other horse or other race that you looked at on that card today and you said, this could be a really interesting money-making opportunity?
Well, let's give you a long shot. Let's do that. In the 7th race of the day, let's go towards number 5, this being Starlight Ridge. So Starlight Ridge last time out was a big price on the boards. That's race 7, number 5. And I spoke earlier on about we had about 3 weeks there where the rail was terrific. And where does this horse find herself? She was wide the entire way, and then she finished up just full of run to finish in the 3rd place position, only lost by about a length and a half. And you might not be familiar with this rider. This is Jose Campos. He is represented by Jerry Olguin, who used to be a rider here at Woodbine. He's the agent now for Jose Campos and Luis Contreras. Campos was one of the top riders in Mexico. He's come up here to Woodbine, and I've been really impressed, Mike. He's done a lot of good things right now, and he's picking up more and more live horses. And I'm hoping that Starlight Ridge has got a shot to pull off a bit of an upset coming up. That's race number 7 of the day, the number 5, Starlight Ridge.
Yeah, Jerry Olguin, one of the true good guys in the sport of thoroughbred racing. He was actually part of our broadcast team when we won the Sovereign Award for our broadcast of the Queen's Plate there in Canada. He does a fantastic job as an analyst, too. So you can keep him in mind for that maybe up the road.
Yeah, no, he's an awesome dude for sure, and his wife actually works with us at Woodbine too. She's in our wagering department as well, and Jerry, a real great guy, and it's funny watching him now as an agent. I think he's more stressed now as an agent than he was as a jockey, because it's like when you're watching, you have no control. So, but he's doing a great job for both of those riders.
Well, Jeff, it's always a delight to catch up with you, my friend. You do a fantastic job, and I probably won't catch up to you before Christmas and the holidays, so happy holidays to you and to your family, and really appreciate the conversation here this morning. Good luck at the windows.
All the best, Mike. Thank you so much. A belated happy Thanksgiving to you, and hopefully we have a great remainder of the meet. Just 10 days left in our 2022 racing season, and you can call me anytime, my friends.
Hard to believe. Jeff Bratt here on HRRN. Appreciate it, Jeff.
Thanks.
What a job he does. The entire team at Woodbine. I've told you this before. I'll say it again. That when you go to Woodbine to work, to just be around the horses, just go and enjoy the races, they roll out the red carpet. They want you there. And they want you there from the media perspective. They want you there from the fan perspective. And they do a tremendous job. They do a wonderful job with the horsemen, too. And, it's great stuff. And I really appreciate Jeff being with me here this morning. And good luck to everybody who takes his picks and plays a few wagers there later today. I hope you do, as they have a good card north of the border. When I come back, get you ready for hour number 2. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network.
What is it about Tony's Steaks and Seafood that makes it such an incredible dining experience? Well, it could be the steaks. One reviewer said, "This is steak nirvana." Or how about the great seafood, the incredible atmosphere and service that's unmatched anywhere? All of those things. It's Tony's of Lexington on Main Street, right across from Triangle Park. Come in, and become part of Tony's family.
Woodford Feed, where tradition merges with technology. Family owned since 1940 and providing exceptional customer service, Woodford Feed specializes in the highest quality feed, using only the finest ingredients to ensure optimal nutrition for your horses. In addition, Woodford Feed can help with all your farm needs, including field seed, fertilizer, and weed control. So whether your horse is sprinting around the racetrack or has a foal by her side, count on Woodford Feed to provide the quality nutrition necessary to perform at the highest level. Woodford Feed, Versailles, Kentucky.
The National HBPA is continuously working to protect the health and welfare of horses by advocating and funding research to help reduce equine injuries, lobbying for a national testing lab to oversee and establish absolute uniform laboratory protocols, advocating for every track to undergo an annual independent surface assessment, passionately supporting off-the-track thoroughbred retirement facilities and adoption groups, and so much more. See additional HBPA initiatives at nationalhbpa.com.
James Brown and Bill Cowher welcoming you back to Dennis Melvin's house. It's time for the Midnight Snack Run.
This is one tricky obstacle course. Sticking to healthy habits in this kitchen is going to take focus and determination, but it can be done, JB.
He's already entered the snack part of the course, and he's eyeballing a jar of chocolatey candy.
That is tempting right off the start.
Uh-oh, he's reaching, Bill, but he pushes it away.
Great stiff arm.
He's approaching a plate of delicious-looking iced cookies.
Oh, Dennis, you only want one of those.
He blows right by him for the apple.
Oh, the fridge. It's make or break time, JB.
He stares down some rich-looking treats. Uh-oh, looks like he's headed for the soda. Wait, he jukes left, grabs the water bottle, and shuts the door with his elbow in record time.
Unbelievable move. I gotta see that again.
And he's out. He even turned off the light.
That's the way you execute a midnight snack run.
Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer.
Go to takeahealthystand.org.
Hi, this is jockey Brian Hernandez. For me, there's no bigger thrill than crossing the finish line in front, and nobody captures the excitement of our sport like Horse Racing Radio Network. Each week, HRRN brings you exclusive talk shows, podcasts, and in-depth conversations with the biggest names in racing, jockeys, trainers, owners, and more. Plus, HRRN is committed to helping disabled riders through their support of the PDJF. So climb aboard a winner today by visiting horseracingradio.net.
Hi, this is Jockey John Court. You're listening to the Horse Racing Radio Network.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
They're coming to the final furlong. Walk White is tenacious. Ali Sheba is right there. And on the outside, seeking the gold. Ali Sheba with the short lead. He's unyielding, seeking the gold. A final move as they come to the wire. And Ali Sheba, America's horse, has done it. Ali Sheba returns to the site of his greatest victory, and he does it here again at Churchill Downs. Ali Sheba wins the world's richest horse race, and he's now the world's richest horse.
Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, continuing on a very busy edition of the Equine Forum, as it always seems to be every Saturday morning. That was Tom Durkin with the call of the 1988 Breeders' Cup Classic, won by Ali Sheba, who was trained by the late Jack Van Berg. His son, Tom Van Berg, now taking over those horses after his dad's passing and continuing on that legacy. And Tom spent an hour with me this past week, Wednesday night, on Trainer Talk, presented by Fasig-Tipton, and he talked about some really interesting things. We got into a big conversation about claiming horses and his syndicate that he has set up to claim horses and try to move them up, and it's worked out very, very well. Tom won 2 races during the Claiming Crown program at Churchill Downs this year, and said that he probably wouldn't have run as many horses as he had if the event were still down in Florida, but being right here in his backyard at Churchill Downs, he was able to do so. But his take on what goes into claiming horses and how he prepares to claim a horse. And one thing Tom told me during that conversation was he likes to see horses in person before he puts that claim slip in on them. So he can watch all the video he wants to. He can see them on television walking around in the paddock and in the post parade. But before he drops that slip, he wants to make sure he's there in person, just how he likes to do it. So he has made it a point to fly to different racetracks and watch these horses before he officially makes a claim on them. I thought that was fascinating, but there were so many different aspects to that conversation that were really neat that you want to go back and listen to. The podcast is on our website at horseracingradio.net. He also spent a lot of time talking about his longtime assistant, Sammy Alvarez. Sammy worked with his dad. He's been with the Vanberg family for more than 40 years. And Tom said he couldn't do this without Sammy by his side. As a matter of fact, when Jack Vanberg passed away, I think he was hoping that Sammy would take over, or expecting that Sammy would take over for him and start training the horses on his own. Sammy didn't want to, which prompted Tom to get back involved with his father's horses, but Tom didn't want to do it without Sammy. It's a really cool story, and Sammy is going to be with me in just a few minutes after the top of the hour, and he is this week's Unsung Hero, that segment presented by Woodbine Entertainment, and it's going to be a really fun visit, and looking forward to catching up with Sammy Alvarez in just a few minutes. Coming up at 9:35, another segment you will not want to miss. Kentucky Senator Damon Thayer going to be with me. He's going to talk about the impact and the benefits that horsemen are seeing racing in the state of Kentucky. He also has some very interesting takes on HISA and on Flightline. Maybe a bit controversial, but very, very interesting takes from the Kentucky Senator coming up at 9:35. So make sure you stay tuned for that conversation. 10 o'clock, it's the TwinSpires Triple Play. I will welcome James Scully to the program. Kurt Becker's Stroll Through Racing History coming up at 10:20. And at 10:30, I Ask, They Answer with trainer Dale Romans and turf rider Tim Wilkin. It is all ahead. Hour 2, Hour 3. That's right after I pause 10 seconds for station identification and your Visit Barbados racing update. This is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Racing fans will be treated to a post-Thanksgiving feast of graded stakes races this afternoon with 5 racetracks across North America hosting top-level events. Juveniles are in the spotlight at Churchill Downs, with Tom Amos trainees expected to make their presence felt. Amos will saddle the expected heavy favorite, Hoosier Philly, in the Grade 2 Goldenrod and the 3-1 second choice Curly Jack in the Grade 2 Jockey Club Gold Cup. A race featuring a competitive 9-horse field with instant coffee and Red Route 1 also expected to take some action at the windows. Aqueduct's Saturday card is highlighted by the Grade 2 Red Smith and the Grade 2 Fall Highweight, in which Factor It In and Runnin' Son of a Gun each carry top impost of 132 pounds. The Gray and Mazarine at Woodbine, along with the Seabiscuit at Del Mar and Berkeley Handicap at Golden Gate, round out today's graded stakes action. That's your Visit Barbados Racing Update, brought to you by Barbados Tourism. Learn more at visitbarbados.org.
If you've been waiting to discover that sweet spot where peace of mind meets the time of your life, then it sounds like you've been waiting on Barbados. You've been waiting to experience a meal that makes you book a flight to have it again. You've been waiting for adventure in the sun, from the majesty of horse racing and polo to the thrill of surfing our playful waves. From the moment you set foot on the island, you'll realize Barbados is exactly what you've been waiting for. Visit jetblue.com/Barbados for special vacation packages.
This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
Welcome back. Hour number 2 of the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, with you on this Saturday morning, getting ready for this week's Unsung Heroes, presented by Woodbine Entertainment, which is going to begin hour number 2 for you on this Saturday morning. And then, as I mentioned, Damon Thayer coming up later in the hour, right around 9:35 Eastern Time. I want to remind you of the poll question that I threw out there this morning. And many of you are taking time to let me know your opinions. You heard from Chuck Simon earlier. I'll talk to Dale and Tim about this topic later in the show. Was the sport of thoroughbred racing better when handicap races were a part of it? And on our Twitter feed, you can vote yes or no. Quite simple. And so far, it appears that the yeses are winning in a runaway. 76% of you saying that, yes, it was indeed better when handicap races were a part of the sport. Let me know your thoughts at HRRN on Twitter, Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook, or email the show, Mike@horseracingradio.net. And reminders, If you missed the podcast or the interviews in the first hour of the program with Chuck Simon or Jeff Bratt, you can catch the podcast of this show at your leisure, horseracingradio.net, and on every major podcast platform. Well, we kick off Hour 2 with this week's edition of Unsung Heroes.
Heroes in the world of sports are not uncommon, oftentimes thrusting themselves into the limelight through unimaginable feats.
Back behind the ball, Woods puts it.
And in! He has done it! Tiger is back! Tiger is back on top! Tiger Woods, the 2019 Masters champion!
And breathtaking performances.
Here's how you count to 8. 3, 2, 1. And for the 8th time, college basketball's national championship trophy is coming home to Kentucky.
But behind every great hero, there are others. Individuals who play a crucial role in the achievements of those we read about in the headlines. The ultimate team players. Content to stand behind the curtain, embracing their place as a vital part of a sport's success. In horse racing, these are the unsung heroes.
Now, this segment is one of my favorites that I get to bring your way here on the Horse Racing Radio Network, Unsung Heroes, where we recognize those individuals who work behind the scenes and do fantastic work. And without them, we don't have a sport. And that is true with Sammy Alvarez, who is the assistant trainer to Tom Van Berg. He also worked with the late legendary Hall of Famer Jack Van Berg prior to this. He's been with the family for about 40 years, 40-plus years now, and Sammy is this week's unsung hero, and he's kind enough to take a little time out of his morning training to be with me here this morning. Sammy, good morning. I appreciate the visit.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing very well, and I'm very excited to talk with you because this past week I had a chance to visit with Tom on my Trainer Talk show, and one of the points he brought up right away was that he couldn't do this without you by his side, and I think it's just his comments were so kind about you that I said, Sammy has to be this week's unsung hero.
Well, it's good, so I work for Jack, and I have to turn anything. It's going the same way, but work for Jack, so it's still working right here.
When did you first start working for the Van Berg family, Sammy?
I started by 1978.
What do you remember about the first day on the job?
Well, I work in Mexico on the horses, but it's different here, So Jack is trying teaching, straight to everybody. Jack is a straight man, so he wanted everything is straight, So when he's taught to me, you haul on this horse like this, clean the stall like this, he said, wow, this is different, So now it's easy, So I like a Jack, but to care about the horses. Now the new trainers is to care different,
Why
so,
Jack Van Berg? How did you get started with Jack as opposed to somebody else?
Well, no, I start for Jack. Soon I come into Mexico. My daddy worked for Jack, and I start for Jack next day. So walking on horses, and I groom in the pony and the one horse, and later I groom in the 4 horses. So, but now.
What kind of teacher was Jack? What kind of person was he to work with?
Well, I said unbelievable, but Jack is teach you straight and everything, He don't lie to you, Jack is told you something straight, He said you do this and exactly it's going straight, Sometimes the trainers, the other trainers is lie to you, teaching everything. Jack is teaching me everything for chew the horses and grooming the horse, so I'm happy about the Jack is teach me like this.
Sammy, he had so many tremendous horses over the years. Ali Sheba and Gate Dancer and even Bloomin' Affair comes to mind. Who were some of your favorite Jack Van Berg horses you got to work with?
Well, the favorite is Ali Sheba, He like a Gate Dancer, but Gate Dancer is run too crazy in a race, He put in the Adamus. I remember, when it's the first time he break a maiden in Omaha, and he bring into Hollywood Park. I groomed the horse, and Chris McCarty rode right there in Hollywood Park, And Los Barrera, he got a horse. He got 3-4 in a row. He rode in William Schumacher, and I grew him in Gay Dancer, and Chris McCarty rode in Gay Dancer. So he going in a race, Gay Dancer, he win by 3-4 lengths, easy. But the neck, he's looking by the grandstand. He's heard by the peoples, and he coming, Chris McCarty, and he told me, Sammy, this horse, he run a lot. Nice horse, but I don't want to run no more. I remember that. Chris McCarty told me that. And Jackie said, what happened? He said, I don't control. I go in one rein, and he's not straight ahead. So never whip, but the horse is run along, you know. And Chris McCarty said, it's a nice horse, but it's crazy, you know.
And he ran with earmuffs, right?
Yes, with Jackie putting the earmuffs right there. He taken to San Francisco or Camino Real, and he put in right there the earmuffs. Anyway, he ran outside the rail, but he ran second. Second or win, I don't remember exactly. That's what Jackie told me right there. He said, Sammy, you went to the Derby, you will win me. He said, well, it's all right, I gone to the Derby, you know. And but Jackie picking a good horse like that, you know. So he picking right there the second time he running, he picked for the Derby. So Jackie got good eyes and good hands for the horses. I know that.
Wow. What's your favorite Ali Sheba story you like to tell?
Well, the Ali Sheba, the story, you know, it was when Jackie Brennan here for the Derby, he ran in Turway, but he put him in a dark 9. But he said sometimes the Derby's coming late, and he put him in the dark. That's what we try schooling by Ali Sheba for the Derby, you know. And so he got a good race right here for the Derby. Jack's so happy about win the Derby. I remember, he said, I promised my daddy I win the Derby. He told me that, off to the winner. And he said, I win at the Derby. He said, good. But he said, you know, Jackie liked more Ali Sheba, but she run more straight, you know. And he got the story, too. He's making more money but the young horses, you know, that year.
Yeah.
6,600,000 something, you know. John Henry got the record. I remember. That's what Jackie's talking, you know. He said, I'm happy, but they got a good horse. So, yeah, Ali Sheba is the favorite. I remember that. He's happy about Blooming Affair, too, you know, but Ali Sheba is the favorite.
Yeah, talking with Sammy Alvarez, the longtime assistant trainer with the Van Berg family. He was with Jack, as you just heard him talk about, and now with Jack's son, Tom, and they make up quite a team together. When Jack passed away in December of 2017, Sammy, I think he kind of expected or was hoping that maybe you would take over the operation for him, and he wanted to make sure that the one thing that he wanted to make sure of was that you had a barn full of horses to run, but you decided, you know, I don't want to be the head guy. How come?
Well, it's always Jackie talking, you know. He says sometimes, trust me, not trust him when he's passed away. He told me a couple of times. He said, what did you do, Sammy? You back to California or you stay here? He said, Jack, I'm glad by working here for you guys, Tom and Jack. I'm happy. I stay here. And so when Jackie passed away, the owners, trust to ours. But he got winners anyway, you know. So he's still rolling same way. Tom is a good gentleman right here. And he's rolling the horses same way. So now I say he's happy, but this jury is very lucky, but she got winners, you know. Tom is training great right now. He's better for me, you know. Every day looking better. Tom is training better.
Yeah. You know, Sammy, Tom said that he didn't want to do this without you. He considers you to be such a big part, first of all, a good friend, but such a big part of his success. What's your role? How do you look at Sammy Alvarez and your contribution to the team?
Well, as always I say, you know, I'm happy, but I help Tom, you know. As always I say, I respect this family. I respect Jack. Or is I happy when I come into the United States and he give me a job. And Jackie passed away and Tom is care with me, give me a job. So I so happy and I try to help the last man I had, you know. And I happy, but every time is rolling same, you know. I don't want a trainer, but I like this still assistant for Tom. And he's held right here in the Chedro, and Tom is the boss. So I respect it.
Yeah, well, Sammy, I can tell you that Tom thinks the world of you. I know Jack must have thought the world of you to be concerned whether or not you would have a barn full of horses when he passed away. You are a true unsung hero in the sport of thoroughbred racing, and I really appreciate you spending a little time with me here this morning. And continued success, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and have a good day.
All right. Sammy Alvarez, this week's Unsung Hero, that segment presented by Woodbine Entertainment. A great story about Gate Dancer, by the way. I love that. And getting a chance to hear him talk about that love of the family. And, hey, I worked with Jack, and now I'm working with Tom, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm happy here. And those relationships in racing, yes, they happen, but they don't happen often. And it's a very special bond. And my thanks to Sammy Alvarez for taking time to be this week's Unsung Hero, presented by Woodbine. I am back right after this word from Woodbine.
The thrill of world-class racing continues at Toronto's Woodbine Racetrack. Kick off the weekend's action with Twilight Racing each Thursday evening at 4:50 p.m. Eastern, followed Friday, Saturday, and Sunday programs beginning at 1:10 p.m. Eastern. With racing now through December 11th and plenty of weekend stakes, you are not going to want to miss the action at Woodbine. For wagering updates, handicapping tips, racing news, and more, visit woodbine.com. That's woodbine.com.
And remember, if you know somebody you feel deserves to be recognized as an unsung hero in the sport, make sure you pass along their information to me. That's Mike at horseracingradio.net. You can also do it on our social media pages. If you think somebody is deserving of being recognized as an unsung hero, just send me their story, send me their contact information, and I will do my best to have them on this segment in the weeks ahead. All right, coming up at 9:35, Senator Damon Thayer going to be with me to talk about Kentucky racing. Some interesting takes on HISA and on Flightline from Damon coming up, too, at 9:35. I'm back with more. This is the Equine Forum presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Action-packed horse racing is on the card this December at Gulfstream Park. Live racing Wednesday through Sunday. There's plenty to bet on with weekly stakes races, the return of turf racing, and jockeys and trainers from all across the country. Enjoy the races outdoors at the new Carousel Club or cool off in our private suites or the Trackside Restaurant 10 Pub. For stake schedules, tickets, and reservations, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
Family run since 2001, Mulholland Springs has established a reputation for raising, selling, and racing top-class horses, including Grade 1 winners Bodie Express, Never Retreat, and Malibu Mint, along with 2022 leading juveniles and Tell Me No Lies and Cave Rock. Mulholland Springs is also proud to have bred and raised Breeders' Cup Sprint contender Manny Wah, winner of Keeneland's Grade 2 Phoenix. Maintaining a high level of individual care and attention to detail for each horse. Visit us at mulhollandsprings.com.
Consider the advantage of owning a Maryland bred and run for 30% more in Maryland. With a lucrative 15% owner bonus and a 15% developer bonus on all open overnight races for Maryland breds finishing first, second, or third, it pays to race in Maryland. Learn more about all the advantages of breeding and owning Maryland breds at MarylandThoroughbred.com. That's MarylandThoroughbred.com.
Churchill Downs 19-day fall meet runs now through November 27th with 15 stakes worth over $4 million and purses powered by the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund. You are not going to want to miss the fall meet at Churchill Downs. Featured during the meet will be the November 12th Claiming Crown, the Grade 1 Clark on Friday, November 25th, and the start to the road to the Kentucky Derby on Saturday, November 26th with the Grade 2 Kentucky Jockey Club. For tickets and more information, visit churchilldowns.com.
This is Eddie Delahousie. You're listening to the Horse Racing Radio Network.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, Presented by TwinSpires.
Rich Strike's coming under a ride. He's fifth and down inside. Folsom's going to switch to the outside for the final quarter mile. West Willpower set down for the drive. Proxy comes wide off the turn. These two head-to-head. Last Samurai third, Folsom fourth and closing. Racing for the eighth pole. West Willpower bracing for Proxy. West Willpower digs in. Proxy surges. Nothing between them with a 16th to go. Proxy on the outside. West Willpower fights on, but Proxy got it. Proxy beats West Willpower right on the wire. Folsom was third, and off the board was the Derby winner, Rich Strike.
Well, last week on this program, I had a chance to visit with trainer Mike Stidham looking ahead to the Clark, and he talked about his trainee Proxy. And one thing we talked about, and I brought this up to him, was that you just got the sense that a big Grade 1 win, and for Proxy a greatest stakes win, was right around the corner. And this was his next opportunity. It happened yesterday. Travis Stone just had the call for you. He breaks through, not just in a greatest stakes, but he breaks through in a Grade 1. And you can question the quality of the field, and was this really Grade 1 quality, a Grade 1 quality type of race? Probably not. But it doesn't matter, because Proxy, for the rest of his life, when he goes to the breeding shed, whatever it's going to be, is going to have G1 next to his name. He is going to be known as a Grade 1 winner, and that is a massive deal when it comes to his stallion value and his overall value as a racehorse. So congratulations to Proxy, to the team, Joel Rosario, Mike Stidham, Godolphin. That's a huge win in the Clark yesterday. It seems like Godolphin's made a habit of getting victories in the Clark, haven't they? Maxfield comes to mind, of course. But, yeah, huge win by Proxy, and congratulations to them. He does break through, and it's just funny that I said that to Mike. I said, it just seems like he's sitting on it. And coming into the race, he'd only won an allowance race. I mean, that was his biggest win to date. He hadn't broken through in a greatest stakes, but he'd been knocking on the door. And he finally got the right scenario and the right setup yesterday. As for Rich Strike, who did not fire his best shot, didn't fire at all. Maybe it was, and this was another thing that came up on the show last week with Dale and Tim, the 20 days, wheeling him back in 20 days after that run in the Breeders' Cup Classic, which was actually okay. You bring him back in 20 days, shorter rest than what he's used to, and he just, nothing. There was nothing there from Rich Strike yesterday. And I said on this program a week ago that if Rich Strike were to beat older horses in the Clark, he is hands down the 3-year-old champion, because he would be the only 3-year-old in the country with a significant win over older horses. And he's the Derby winner. Some people didn't agree, but I certainly think he would be. Well, we don't have to worry about that now, because I think that lackluster effort yesterday is going to steer enough voters away from Rich Strike, and probably should. Yes, he's still the Derby winner, but there was no follow-through. I know he ran a bang-up race in the Lucas Classic, controversial at the end, but there was no real follow-through after that for Rich Strike. That probably crushed his chances of being 3-year-old champion yesterday. Maybe it was the quick turnaround. Maybe it's just that horses are not machines. But it wasn't his day yesterday. It opens the door now for Epicenter, for Cyberknife, and for Taba. And I still say you have to take a long look at Cyberknife. I do have a vote for the Eclipse Awards, and I'm going to take a very long look at Cyberknife. I mentioned it after the Breeders' Cup when he was narrowly defeated in the Dirt Mile. But you look at their resumes. Epicenter, 1 Grade 1 win. It came in the Travers. Big deal. The Travers, the Midsummer Derby. That carries some weight. He defeated Rich Strike that day, and he defeated Cyberknife. Cyberknife was second. Rich Strike was fourth. Taba and Cyberknife have both won 2 Grade 1s. So is two Grade 1 wins greater in the eyes of the voters than 1 Grade 1 win in the Travers? or the Kentucky Derby, for example. I think in a year like this, where it is so wide open, and there is no clear-cut favorite for the 3-year-old championship, I do put more weight on having 2 Grade 1 wins in a season than winning just one. And I know Epicenter was runner-up several times, had been knocking on the door, but he didn't win. Cyberknife's 2 Grade 1 wins came in the Arkansas Derby and the Haskell. Nothing wrong with the Haskell. Nothing wrong with the Arkansas Derby. Taba, his 2 Grade 1 wins came in the Santa Anita Derby and the Pennsylvania Derby. And in the latter, the Pennsylvania Derby, he turned the tables on Cyberknife from the Haskell. So in that respect, it's a little difficult to separate Cyberknife and Taba. Now maybe you say, okay, let's look at what happened in the Breeders' Cup. Cyberknife almost wins the dirt mile. Taba runs a bang-up race in the Breeders' Cup Classic, considering the fact that if you take Flightline out of the equation, he's right there. Finishes third. Epicenter didn't get his opportunity to run his race in the Classic. Unfortunately, he was injured. I really think you got to take a long look at Cyberknife, and it wouldn't shock me. I still think what's going to happen, I think that there is enough sentiment now for Epicenter as being the most consistent 3-year-old in the country this year, even though he only won the 1 Grade 1. I think most voters were probably going to side his direction. But I'm going to take a long look at Cyberknife and Taba. And I think between those two, right now, I lean towards Cyberknife. And you can say, okay, well, he ducked the big boys in the Breeders' Cup Classic. He went to the dirt mile was not an easy spot either, let me tell you. And he nearly wins that one. So I think, for me, it's probably a little bit more Cyberknife than Taba at this point, but I'll do some more homework on it. But I have a feeling that Epicenter may walk away with the top honors because of his consistency. But do you count 1 Grade 1 victory and some consistency, finishing runner-up in some of those spots? Do you count that as being greater than winning 2 Grade 1 races? It's a legitimate question, and I think that's one that myself and other voters are going to have to really take some time and put some thought into it and take into consideration. But Rich Strike, yesterday, in my opinion, lost all opportunity to be 3-year-old champion. Poll question for you this morning: was the sport of thoroughbred racing better when handicap races were a part of it? Seems like most of you throughout HRRN Nation think that it was. 76% of you, as a matter of fact, saying, yeah, it was better. And I have to agree. The days of watching horses, Chuck Simon talked about it with me in the first segment of the show today. The days of watching horses carry some weight and, more importantly, give up weight to the lesser regarded horses in races, those days are gone. And you say, all right, Barron, what about today's fall high weight at Aqueduct? We have Factor It In and Runnin' Son of a Gun, co-high weights, both carrying 132 pounds. Solid weight. I pointed out the fact that, we refer to like Damascus, for example, as a horse that carried a lot of weight. John Henry, another one. John Henry carried 130 pounds, not 132, 130 pounds in the Santa Anita Handicap and in the Hollywood Gold Cup. Now, that was a distance of ground. Today's race is 3/4 of a mile, 6 furlongs, the fall high weight. But still, 132 pounds, okay. Legit. But the real difference comes with Factor It In and Runnin' Son of a Gun only giving up 9 pounds to the horse carrying the lowest weight in the race. That's Bezos, 30-1 long shot at 123. Meaning that the racing secretary, when he assigns these weights, is looking at it saying Bezos is the horse in the race with the least opportunity to win. So how do we make it, in theory, so that every horse has an equal opportunity to hit the finish line together? That's what handicap races are all about. And when I throw the poll question out to you, Patty, as I mentioned, chimes in via email and says yes to handicap races. Also, SOJ, or Soj, on Twitter says, from a bettor's viewpoint, racing was better when extra weights were assigned to heavy favorites like Forgo, because we didn't have the kind of exotic wagers we have now. It was too unrewarding cashing on a big favorite. These days, it's a free space in a pick 6, a pick 5, etc. And one of the things that came up when talking with Chuck Simon earlier was Flightline. The sentiment that Flightline would be mentioned in the same sentence as a Secretariat or a Man of War, some of the greatest horses we've ever seen, in my opinion, is a bit premature. I know Damon Thayer, Kentucky Senator, has some thoughts on that coming up in the next segment in just about 5 minutes from right now. But I think it's a bit premature to say, okay, you had 6 career starts. Yes, you won them all. Yes, you dominated. It looks like you might be as good as a Secretariat or as good as a Man of War, or pick any legendary horse you want to throw out there. But it's only 6 races. It's a very small sample. So can we really, truly say, I don't think you can compare them in that way. The other thing that came up was carrying weight. Chuck said after the Breeders' Cup Classic, his opinion was that Flightline really had nothing else to prove. Well, back in the day, when racing was different, and I get that it's a different game now, a horse like Flightline would have gone into these handicap races, and he would have been high weight. He would have given up 16, 17, 18, 20 pounds to the longest shot in the race. So if he were to do that, and I understand that those are days gone by, but if indeed Flightline were have gone on to do that, and he still dominates the way he is today, okay, let's put him in that category. Right now, it just looked as if he had the potential to be that type of horse. You can't definitively put him in there after just 6 career starts. You heard me talk about Ta Wee, the Hall of Fame filly, when she won back-to-back runnings of the Fall Highway in 1969 and 1970. When she won the race in 1970, she carried 140 pounds. She gave up 19 pounds to the runner-up. 19. And she was a filly. Pretty incredible. But that was a different era. And we looked at racing differently. And, you know, the other thing Chuck brought up in the first segment of the show, and if you missed that conversation, go back to the podcast after I finish up here this morning, horseracingradio.net. You can listen there. The other thing he brought up is when trainers, a smart guy like a Bobby Frankel, for example, started to kind of make it a tail wagging the dog situation here. When they went to racing secretaries and said, okay, I have all these good horses. I'm not running in this race if you put this kind of weight on my horse, or if I have to give up that much weight to the other horses in there. And things started to change with trainers like Bobby Frankel. All of a sudden, it was the horseman calling the shots and saying, hey, we're not going to, you want our horse in this big race, you want to draw the crowds, you want the big name there, don't put that much weight on my horse. And all of a sudden, things started changing. And I think that's a legitimate point that Chuck brought up. Anyways, continue to weigh in on that poll question. I think there's going to be some more interesting takes. I'll try to get to them throughout the remainder of the show. But was the sport of thoroughbred racing better when handicap races were a part of it? Keep them coming. I'll try to pass along the rest of those results later in the show. But coming up next, it is Kentucky State Senator Damon Thayer. Lots of things to discuss with Damon, a couple maybe controversial topics here coming up, so stay with me. That's coming up next here on the Equine Forum on this Saturday morning. It's all presented by TwinSpires right here on HRRN.
Race the TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
New to Coolmore America for 2023 is Jack Christopher. A son of top sire Munnings and a 3-time Grade 1 winner, Jack Christopher was an 8 3/4 length winner on debut at Saratoga at 2 before winning the Grade 1 Champagne with a whopping 102 Beyer. His 3-year-old campaign included wins in the Grade 2 Pat Day Mile, the Grade 1 Woody Stevens by 10 lengths, and the Grade 1 H. Allen Jerkins. Jack Christopher stands at an introductory fee of $45,000. Call the team at Ashford today to book your mare before he fills up.
Family run since 2001, Mulholland Springs has established a reputation for raising, selling, and racing top-class horses with a high level of individual care and attention to detail for each horse.
Pony Express wins the Clark.
Never retreats, takes the First Lady.
It's Malibu Men, and they take the Grade 1 Princess Rooney.
And Tell Me No Lies has won the Chandelier, and Cave Rock to win by almost 6 lengths in the American Pharoah.
Visit us at mulhollandsprings.com.
It's time now to shine the spotlight on the Darley Taking the Reins Performer of the Week.
Midnight Bourbon battles on Gamely, and Happy Savers closing down the center of the track. There's a 16th to go. It's Maxfield in front. Happy Savers finding stride late in the game. Maxfield digs down deep to win it. Maxfield wins the Clark.
Maxfield capped off his brilliant career with that game victory in the Grade 1 Clark, boosting his career earnings to more than $2 million and making him your Darley Taking the Reins Performer of the Week. Darley Stallion Maxfield won 8 of his 11 starts, including the Grade 1 Breeders' Futurity at 2 and the Grade 1 Clark. He won or placed in a total of 9 graded events at 6 different tracks. Maxfield will stand at a fee of $40,000 in 2023. Learn more about Maxfield and all the Darley Stallions by visiting DarleyAmerica.com.
Hello, this is Bill Mott. You're listening to Horse Racing Radio Network.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Here's Flightline. He was 3 lengths away. He was 2 lengths away. He draws within a length and a half of Life is Good. And this duo goes on past the quarter pole into the stretch at Keeneland. And Flightline just moves right by Life is Good. Flightline has the lead. He's got it by 2. He's got it by 3. A furlong to go. Life is Good is second. Gap of 5 back to Tava. Flightline, a 16th to go. World-class racehorse, world-class performance, and a world championship event. Flightline has won the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Welcome back to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on this Saturday morning. Mike Penna, Baron in the backstretch, taking you through this 3-hour journey and getting ready to welcome in Kentucky Senate Majority Leader Damon Thayer with some thoughts on Flightline, with some thoughts on HISA and on the Kentucky racing and breeding industry. It is a wonderful time to be racing in the state of Kentucky. So many great things happening, and I will talk to Damon about that momentarily. By the way, that was our good friend Kurt Becker with a call of the Breeders' Cup Classic and Flightline's dominant victory here at Keeneland in Lexington. If the senator will allow me, I'm going to bring you the Kentucky Bred Spotlight segment prior to getting started with his conversation, because we're going to talk about the significant things happening here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky when it comes to thoroughbred racing, and I think this ties into it. You know, Kentucky breds are truly your best chance at graded stakes success. Kentucky breds have won 82% of all Grade 1 races through October and 69% of all graded stakes races run in the U.S. And when it comes to 2-year-old racing, Kentucky breds are also at the top of the class, having won 20 of the 26 graded stakes races for juveniles, including all 9 Grade 1s ahead of this year's Breeders' Cup. In addition, 9 of the top 10 leading earners in 2022 are Kentucky bred topped and undefeated Flightline, of course, is right there with them, a scintillating winner of the Breeders' Cup and an earner of more than $4.2 million this year. Breed them, raise them, race them. We all win. You can go to KentuckyBreds.com for more information. And without further ado, I do welcome in the Kentucky Senator, Damon Thayer. Damon, appreciate the visit, my friend.
Mike, good morning. It's great to be back on your show. I hope you're doing well.
I am doing extremely well. And, I have to tell you, I wanted to read that first because it really speaks to what's happening here with the breeding industry. But there are some wonderful things going on the racing side of things that horsemen are taking advantage of, and the numbers prove it out.
Yeah, we had a really good run the last couple of years in the Kentucky General Assembly with benefits for the racing and breeding industry in terms of new laws. We codified historical horse racing machines in the wake of a negative Supreme Court decision. HHR had existed for about 10 years in Kentucky on the back of several positive court decisions and a letter that I sought from the Attorney General back in 2009 on its pari-mutuel legality. And it had been regulated by the Racing Commission. Then we had that awful Supreme Court opinion in 2020. We came back in 2021 and passed a law into statute that said HHR is pari-mutuel horse racing, just like live racing, simulcast, advanced deposit wagering. It is pari-mutuel racing and should be treated as such in terms of the way it's bet. Then we came back this year and passed House Bill 607, sponsored by my good friend Adam Koenig, and we set a tax rate, a 1.5% flat tax across the board on those 4 different types of wagers. And, of course, not only does the HHR help fuel regular base purses for horses bred anywhere in the world, but it fuels the money for the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund. And we're just seeing our purses skyrocket. We saw $150,000 maiden special weights at Kentucky Downs, $100,000 maiden specials at Keeneland. Right now at Churchill Downs, the maidens are going for $120,000. And when Turfway opens up on Wednesday night for its 4-month winter racing stand, the purses are going to be $70,000. Those are the same purses that they're offering for maidens at Del Mar right now. It's going to be extremely competitive with Gulfstream Park this winter. I was at Churchill Downs on Thanksgiving Day and talked to a number of horsemen, and it's amazing the number of horsemen who are leaving a string in Kentucky for the winter to take advantage of those big wintertime purses at Turfway Park. Churchill Downs has elected to leave the Trackside Training Center, formerly known as Sports Spectrum, open for the winter. So a lot of horsemen are leaving a string there. I talked to Rusty Arnold. He's leaving 20 at Keeneland. And, of course, Churchill Downs is building 5 new barns at Turfway Park, which will increase by 180 the stall capacity there. So a lot of horsemen there. Tyler Picklesheimer, the racing secretary at Turfway, told me they had 2,000 stall applications for 1,000 stalls at Turfway. So, 2 years ago when we were passing the historical horse racing bill, Senate Bill 120, sponsored by Senator John Schickel, I said that we were within a couple of years of having the best year-round racing circuit in America, and I think the future is very bright. But Mike, I think we're there. And the field size is huge. I mean, yeah, we've had some setbacks. The purses at Ellis Park in the summertime are not as big as we'd like yet, but Churchill Downs just bought it, and they're committed to doing the same things at Ellis Park that they've done at Turfway to make sure that this year-round racing circuit is as strong as it can be. And I know a lot of racing fans are critical because the turf course at Churchill Downs didn't grow in as fast as they would have liked. But how many companies do you know are spending $10 million putting in a new turf course? Not many. Yeah. So I think it's nothing but blue sky, and also a big win for the bettors. we're the first and only state to require that racetracks and ADWs have winning payoffs to the penny, Mike, instead of to the dime. And that's a huge tax cut for horse players. And I'm sure your listeners who are playing, whether live or simulcast or via ADW, are noticing that they're getting a lot more money back when they cash winning bets. Other states need to look at this. I think not only do we have the best purses, the largest fields, but we are the most pro-horse player-friendly racing state in North America right now.
And, Damon, you mentioned the fact that you think we're there when it comes to having the best year-round racing product, and I think that's true. I think when you talk about $70,000 maiden purses at Turfway Park, I think you can certainly make that case. This has happened in a very short period of time, as you pointed out. Is this just the tip of the iceberg? Are there still bigger things to come for racing here in Kentucky?
I think so. I still think we're in the reintroduction stage. Just I'll give you an example. When Gun Runner broke his maiden in the fall of his 2-year-old year at Churchill Downs, it was a $33,000 purse. When Epicenter, also owned by my friend Ron Winchell, broke his maiden last year at Churchill Downs, it was a $120,000 purse.
Wow.
Yeah, I think especially at Ellis Park and Turfway. I mean, let's be honest; those are the two impediments to having a great year-round racing circuit because their purses aren't as big as those offered at Keeneland, Kentucky Downs, and Churchill Downs. With Churchill buying Ellis Park and committing to improvements and purse increases, their maidens this summer were $60,000. I think you're going to see those continue to go up, and I think you're going to see added race dates at Ellis Park. No confirmation of this yet from CDI, but they've been racing under the previous ownership. They've been racing 3 days a week. I think you could see Ellis Park heading back for 4 days a week, maybe eventually 5 days a week of racing, which I think will add to the competitive nature because horsemen want those racing opportunities. And 3 days a week is fine, but I think horsemen would like to, if we can have horsemen stay here instead of go to Saratoga, I think you're going to see those 4 days a week racing opportunities. Same at Turfway Park. I think, when I worked there, it's ironic. I moved here to Kentucky 30 years ago this month to work at Turfway Park. And we used to race 5 days a week back then. And, we do have some headwinds in this country in terms of the smaller foal crop. And we, trying to maintain an average field size of 8 horses per race is a challenge. But I think if the larger purses bring horses here from other places or keep horses here instead of going to Saratoga in the summer and to Oaklawn and Fairgrounds and Gulfstream in the winter, I think you'll see those field sizes increase, and I think you'll see the Churchill Downs team consider adding race days to the schedule in the summer and the winter. And that's why I think you've still got a lot of upside in Kentucky racing. We just had an amazing Breeders' Cup at Keeneland. The handle was the highest in the history of the Breeders' Cup event. 2 of the best tracks to host the Breeders' Cup are here in Kentucky, Keeneland and Churchill Downs. I think you're going to see those tracks host the Breeders' Cup more frequently. We knew that Keeneland was a great event, but unfortunately, we knew that Churchill was a great venue for hosting it. But unfortunately, the COVID pandemic hit Keeneland in 2020 and had to run it without fans. But look at the numbers from this year and the quality of the racing. Just a great venue. And by the way, after redistricting this year, Keeneland is now in my Senate district, so I'm even more proud of what happens out there at Keeneland, because I get to walk into the paddock and say, hello, and welcome to the 17th Senate District. I hope you're having a great day.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Visiting with Kentucky Senate Majority Leader Damon Thayer here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Damon, one of the topics that has been front and center in the sport for months now is the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority, otherwise known as HISA. Will the regulations and the procedures getting ready to be put forth by HISA have any impact on what we've been talking about with the racing product here in Kentucky?
I think that's a good question, Mike. And I have the greatest confidence in the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission to implement rules that protect the integrity of horse racing for the bettors and the health and safety of racing for horses and jockeys and participants. You say HISA, I say HISA. You say tomato, I say tomato. So I'm going to say something that's kind of controversial. I'm not a big fan of HISA. I'm a big 10th Amendment guy. The 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution says that anything that's not specific in our Constitution or Bill of Rights to be handled by the federal government should be handled by the states. Never been a big fan of taking a federal government approach to regulating horse racing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my position on this has been backed up by a recent unanimous decision by a federal court of appeals that said that HISA is unconstitutional. And I think that HISA was given too broad of an ability to create and implement rules for racing in America. I think it should be done by the states. The states missed its opportunity, no doubt, and HISA was passed. I think it created some rules that just make no sense, and the implementation was poorly rolled out. Now, having said that, HISA did hire one of my closest friends, Mark Guilfoyle, who for 30 years worked at the Racing Commission here in Kentucky. HISA hired Mark Guilfoyle to work with racing commissions to implement the rules. And I said at the time, and I'll say it again, HISA needs someone like Mark Guilfoyle to save it. But I think its future is in doubt. And I've spoken with Leader Mitch McConnell and Congressman Andy Barr, who I'm very close with. And I've said, look, gentlemen, this thing either needs to be repealed and a new version passed, or Congress needs to delay it, fix it, so that it can be properly implemented. I could get behind a leaner, more streamlined version of HISA, but I have another alternative because I don't want to be one of those guys who is critical of something without offering an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
And I offered an alternative 12 years ago when I passed a law that would allow Kentucky to participate in an interstate compact with other state racing commissions to implement rules on racing integrity and safety. I think it might be time for us to dust off that interstate compact, look at other states like Florida and California and New York and Maryland and maybe Texas and Louisiana and Virginia, and look into a state-based set of reforms through an interstate compact to govern horse racing on a going-forward basis. So, to sum up, not a fan of HISA, validated by the Court of Appeals. I think the solution going forward is either a streamlined, more narrowly focused HISA, or that the leading racing states work together on implementing an interstate racing compact for a state-based solution to HISA. Look, I'm all for standardizing the rules across racing jurisdictions. I'm on record for that 12 years ago when I passed a law that everybody ignored because nobody wanted to talk about integrity, and now we've got HISA because of that. So I offer that solution as a way going forward, Mike.
Yeah, uniformity is something that everybody in the sport would get behind, and I think it's critical that we find a way to develop that uniformity. And as you said, this is the reason that HISA is now in place, because unfortunately states over the years have not been able to get together and work together on this because of the different state regulations and all those types of hurdles that come with it. And, Damon, we could spend another hour talking about this, and we probably will at some point. But we're down to about 2 minutes before I have to get to this next final commercial break, and it's a hard break that I have to hit. But I know you had some interesting takes on Flightline. You said, let me talk about Flightline for a minute when I come on the show. Go ahead, man. What's your parting shot on Flightline?
Obviously a great horse, a brilliant, scintillating horse. I was there for his Breeders' Cup. But I think a horse that only made 6 starts cannot be compared to the greatest horses of all time, like Man of War, Citation, Secretariat, Affirmed, Seattle Slew, and my favorite, Spectacular Bid. He could have if he would have raced another year. And I think when you look at his Beyer speed figure, which was 121, you look at Go Sappers, which was 124. You look at Arrowgate and American Pharaoh, 120. Gunrunner, 117. Ali Sheba was 122. And Sunday Silence, 124. I think the best way to position this brilliant horse is to say he is one of the greatest horses of the Breeders' Cup era, which started in 1984.
Yeah.
He clearly is a brilliant horse. I wish they would have kept him in training another year. I understand the economics as a participant in racehorse partnerships. I understand the insurance liability against him running for another year. I think the best way to position Flightline, and Terry Finley is a very good friend of mine, and so is Jeff Lifson. And I say this with all due respect to them and this horse. The best way to position his place in history is to say he is one of the greatest horses of the Breeders' Cup era. And if you want to make the case that he is the greatest horse of the Breeders' Cup era, up there with Go Sapper and Pharaoh and Gunrunner and Arrowgate and Sunday Silence and Ali Sheba, I think that's a legitimate claim. Yeah. I think you can say he is the greatest horse of the Breeders' Cup era, and people can debate that. But I don't think it's proper to compare him to the greatest horses of all time. So
I said the same thing, Damon. I said that earlier in the program. I agree with that 100%. And by the way, I do have to get to this last break, so I have to cut it short. But, man, I appreciate the conversation here this morning, Senator. It is always a delight to catch up. And let's spend more time talking about the HISA situation going forward in the weeks and the months ahead.
Always happy to be on your show.
Thank you, my friend. Senator Damon Thayer here on HRRN. One final break to get to before we get to hour number 3. I'll tell you all about it next. It's the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Airdrie Stud is proud to announce the arrival of Grade 1 winning millionaire Happy Saver for the 2023 season. Happy Saver boasts one of the most important female families of the century, as his third dam is Broodmare of the Year Weekend Surprise, dam of the legendary AP Indy. Undefeated in his first 5 starts, Happy Saver capped off his perfect 4-for-4 season with an emphatic victory in the historic Grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup.
And Happy Saver stays undefeated. He steps up and he wins the Grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup.
Airdrie Studs, Happy Saver. Think about it.
Tenda Equine and Pet Care products have been keeping world-class equine athletes happy and healthy for generations. Keep your equine athlete looking and performing well with Tenda Next Generation Wound and Skin Care Treatment, along with nutritional supplements, leg and muscle care products, salves, hoof care, poultice, topical aids, and grooming products. Visit tendahorse.com today.
Achieve Equine, makers of Flair Equine Nasal Strips, brings you innovative, evidence-based products for the health and well-being of your equine athletes, like the new Impact Protection Half Pad from Europe, VIP Equestrian, that provides a superior layer of cushioning for the horse's back. Visit achieveequine.com for more information on the innovative products we offer. That's achieveequine.com. Breathe easy, we've got your back.
Get your favorite HRRN shows anytime.
This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
The Brisnet.com call-in show.
Trainer Talk, presented by Facing Tipton.
The Weekend Stakes Preview, presented by Naira Bets.
Follow us on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app to download our latest episodes. Or visit our website at horseracingradio.net to listen live whenever we're on the air. Don't miss a thing. Subscribe to our podcasts today.
This is jockey Rajiv Maharaj, and I love the Horse Racing Radio Network, the best show on the planet.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
One more hour to go. I'll tell you about that coming up next, but I want to remind you, if you missed any portion of the first 2 hours of the show, simply head back to our website, horseracingradio.net. You can listen to the podcast of this show and all of our shows at your leisure, and you can also do that on every major podcast platform as well. Not much time for the historical dates in racing history this week, but I want to mention one in particular. It was November 26, 1992, that Sandy Hawley became the 9th North American rider to win 6,000 races. Sandy, a wonderful friend and really good guy in the sport of thoroughbred racing, so I wanted to commemorate that anniversary by mentioning that one for you here this morning. All right, coming up next, hour number 3 kicks off with the TwinSpires Triple Play. It's James Scully this week. He's going to join me to share his thoughts on a few races you're going to want to keep an eye on later today. 10:20, Kurt Becker takes you on his weekly stroll through racing history. And at 10:30, I once again welcome trainer Dale Romans, turf rider Tim Wilkin on this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer. If your local station is leaving us at this time, continue listening to the third hour of the show nationwide on Sirius 216 XM 204 in the Louisville, Kentucky market on ESPN 680 or on your computer, phone, or tablet at horseracingradio.net. Hour 3 of the Equine Forum is next, right after I pause 10 seconds for station identification. This is HRRN.
From the rail to your radio, this is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
And Super Saver has gone clear now by 5 lengths as they race inside the final 16. Super Saver is out in front for Calvin Burrell, giving chase. Williams Kitten, but the Kentucky Jockey Club goes to Super Saver. A third win in the race for Calvin Burrell.
But here comes Kaish Electronica, mounting a final bid as they enter the final furlong. Mind Over Matter's third. This one's for Phil, desperately trying to hang in there. But here comes the 7-year-old pro, Kaisha Electronica, on by to take the lead and win the Fall Highway Handicap.
Welcome to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
Rachel Alexandra and Calvin Burrell, and they have now split the field and gone clear, and it is Rachel Alexandra. How impressive! Rachel Alexandra wins, and it's a second golden rod for winning jockey Calvin Burrell. Really, was there a second? It was daylight.
Mind That Bird has the seam and angles outside for Chantel Sutherland as they straighten into the lane. And it's Bears Conductor. Mind That Bird. Stimulus Plan. Southern Exchange, not today. Here comes Mind That Bird to take on Bears Conductor. To the outside, Red Leader's coming hard. Mind That Bird, a narrow lead. Mind That Bird, gallant in the gray.
Now, here's Mike Penna.
Welcome back. Hour number 3 of the Equine Forum. Mike Penna, Baron in the backstretch. Happy to have you continuing on with me right up until 11 a.m. Eastern. If you did miss any of the first 2 hours of the program, all you have to do is head back to our website, horseracingradio.net. You can listen to the podcast at your leisure. You can also do that on every major podcast platform. And it's been a fun couple of hours, getting a chance to talk about racing at Woodbine and, talking about the handicap, the former handicap division in racing, and the fall high weight taking place at Aqueduct later today. That topic always seems to come up at this time of year when you have horses carrying a bit more weight than we're used to seeing. That's been a lot of fun, and it's been great to talk about the racing at Churchill, and we ain't done yet, because in just a moment I'm going to welcome James Scully to the program. James will be here to provide the TwinSpires Triple Play, which begins hour number 3. Coming up at 10:20, Kurt Becker will take you on his weekly stroll through racing history, and at 10:30, I Ask, They Answer with trainer Dale Romans, turf rider Tim Wilkin. That's going to be a lot of fun, too. I will ask them their thoughts on handicap racing. Was racing better when handicap races were a part of it? That's one of the topics I'll bring up with Dale and Tim in that final segment at 10:30 Eastern. Before we get to all of that, it is time for this week's edition of the TwinSpires Triple Play. And again, doing the honors, James Scully from Briss and from TwinSpires. And James, it is going to be a spectacular Saturday beneath the TwinSpires. 2-year-olds in the spotlight, including a couple of outstanding graded stakes races.
That is right. Stars of Mar 2 program, and we have got the Grade 2 Kentucky Jockey Club for males, for Kentucky Derby hopefuls, a Road to Kentucky Derby series qualifier, and we've got the Grade 2 Goldenrod for 2-year-old fillies, and it's a Road to the Kentucky Oaks series qualifier. Those two races anchor a terrific 12-race program today at Churchill.
And I wouldn't be me, James, if I didn't bring up the fact that we are now just about 161 days and change away from the running of the Run for the Roses coming up on May 6th of 2023. And, you know, that sounds like a long time, but when we start talking about these 2-year-old prep races leading into it, and then the calendar soon turns to 2023, and we start looking at the early season preps for the 3-year-olds, it's going to be here before we know it, my friend.
I know. I mean, once you get to this point, you know, once you get to the holidays, it's like, you know, once we get past Christmas in a few weeks, you know, I always turn to the Kentucky Derby picture. So, you know, we have these stakes we mentioned, but there'll be lots of maiden and allowance races at Churchill and other tracks here, you know, this week on this busy weekend. And next week has some good racing at Aqueduct, and then we'll get into Gulfstream and Santa Anita. So I'm always got my eye open for 2-year-old performers that could be nice 3-year-olds going forward next year, Mike.
You have come up with 3 races, all at Churchill Downs this afternoon, which our listeners will want to make sure they keep an eye on. And these are races that they can head over to TwinSpires.com and make a wager however you suggest, however they would like, quite frankly, after listening to your analysis. And you have chosen race number 4, which to me was a major head-scratcher. It's a 7-furlong maiden special weight event with a purse of $120,000. That's the first leg of the TwinSpires Triple Play. Then you came back with the 2 stakes races, which are races 10 and 11, respectively. That is the Goldenrod and the Grade 2 Kentucky Jockey Club Stakes. So let's kick it off with race number 4, that full field of 2-year-old filly maidens going 7 furlongs on the main track.
Yeah, that's right. And I really think the main contenders in this race are drawn towards the outside of the field. It's a race that does have some first-time starters in there, but none of those first-time starters appear to be extremely precocious types, you know, training real forwardly. And the runners with experience, there's just not a lot of speed, not a lot of pace on paper in this race. I landed on number 11, Bava. And this is a gun runner filly that in her debut in late July at Saratoga, she got bet down a little bit based on the way she had been training for Cherie DeVaux, but got away slowly from the starting gate and never fired that afternoon. She continued to work forwardly after that debut, and I thought took a major step forward with displaying improved speed the second time out. And even in that second start, she didn't break perfectly, but she quickly overcame it, went out, surged a clear lead on the far turn, and she was just nailed late by a promising filly. I thought a filly that just got the perfect trip that day, ran her down and nailed her right on the wire. Once again, I thought that was another positive performance to build upon. And, you know, Cherie DeVaux has now turned around and freshened this gun runner, Vava, this filly, of nearly 2.5 months in preparation. And this is like her she's 20% win when she has this kind of medium type freshening, a 45 to 90 day freshening. She does extremely well. The other thing I like about the way DeVaux is going is that she really had, I think, a lot of promising 2-year-olds in her barn this summer and this fall, and they're really starting to flash it. 2 of her last 3 wins have come in maiden races. 3 of her last 5 wins have come in maiden races. She's sending out some nice maidens right now. And while Bava is listed as the 7-2 morning line favorite, I think both number 10, Bruna Boyne, who has the top figs in this field for his debut effort, and number 12, Poblano, who is going out for Brendan Walsh, a Curlin colt making his second start off a runner-up effort with Tyler Gaffleone. They're both going to take some money, so I don't think Bava's price is going to be too short. My issue with Bruno Nabuan is that his race was in the slop. It's going to be a fast track today, and I think those figures were a little bit inflated. And Poblano just, to me is, showed no tactical foot whatsoever in his debut, and I'm a little bit worried about the trip he's going to get from the far outside. So I like Bava, number 11, to show speed from the gate with Luis Saez and, post a front-running win in race number 4, Mike.
I will say this, James. Thank goodness that Travis Stone has the responsibility of calling Bru Na Buon when all the horses are scrambling to get to the finish line, because that's a tongue twister.
That really is, no doubt about it. And one thing about Travis, he'd be so well prepared. If I'm like working at the track and I'm like talking about horses and just like a 10-claimer and I mispronounce a name, he's immediately texting, "Hey, the right pronunciation is." So he's all over it as the track announcer.
All of those guys. I mean, Bobby Newman, obviously, who does the Brisnet.com call-in show with you and several other programs here on the network. He's a stickler for pronunciations. He's brilliant when he does his research and comes up with those names. Kurt Becker the same way. Larry Colmus. I mean, that's what makes these guys really, really good. They're so conscientious of making sure they get the call right, but they want those names to be correct too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember at the Derby draw, Travis said he texted Irad Ortiz and said, "Is it Irad or Irad?" And he wrote it back and said, "It doesn't matter as long as you get my name correctly." So Travis said, "Irad it is," because everybody.
As long as he's
Irad.
in the winner's circle, he doesn't care what you call him.
Exactly.
All right, so it is number 11, Vava, for James Scully in the first leg of this week's TwinSpires Triple Play. That's race 4 at Churchill. Let's move on to the second leg. 2 graded stakes, race 10 and 11. Race 10 is the grade 2 Goldenrod, heavy favorite in here. That is number 4, Hoosier Philly, who is even money on the morning line for trainer Tom Amos. She has been brilliant in her 2 starts. Does she leave this race undefeated, James?
She does. I loved her. I loved Hoosier Philly's maiden win at Keeneland. She was like sort of mired in traffic that day on the far turn, Mike, and going into the far turn. And I really offered a sharp turn of foot to draw off with plenty left. I was there. It was not at Keeneland, it was at Churchill. I was here at Churchill that day, and I came away from that race really impressed by her. She tried to get in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, couldn't get in from the AE list. They redirected her to Rags to Riches, and she just continued to take another step in her progression with a sharp 7.5 length win. I think she's one of the most talented 2-year-old fillies we've seen so far this year. And, the thing is that this, sometimes in these races where you have a heavy favorite, and I think Hoosier Phillies will be odds on, the second or third choices can run second, and there's no value to be made, like either on the win bet or perhaps in that straight exacta bet. But you do have a scenario sometimes in these races where you have a heavy favorite and you don't like the horses that are going to be the second and third choices behind that horse, maybe even the fourth choice. So your lowest will pay exactas, you're against those horses in the second slot. There's no greater example of this than in the Breeders' Cup Classic this year with Flightline. He's 2-5. You're not going to make money betting on him in the straight pools. But if you are willing to play straight exactas and for any reason you didn't think Epicenter or Life is Good or Tabo was going to run second, Olympiad, I think, was undoubtedly a candidate to fill that spot. And so, for example, if you bet two $20 exactas in the Breeders' Cup Classic, Flightline over Olympiad and Flightline over somebody else, and you hit the Flightline Olympiad, you got $357 back on that wager. You made over $300 on a 2-5 favorite. And that's the way I'm going to play Hoosier Philly in the Goldenrod Stakes. I'm not keen on the 5-2 second choice, Pretty Mischievous, or the 10-1 third choice American Rocket. The horses that I like, that I give a good chance to fill the runner-up spot, I'm going to start with number 5, Black Forest. He was a guy. I expect her to get a favorable front end trip here off of a really sharp wire-to-wire win on the Keeneland, on the Breeders' Cup Friday undercard at Keeneland. And while she will be stretching out the 2 turns, I mean, she's a daughter of Frosted out of a forestry mare. I think a mile and a 16th could be right up her alley. The other horse I'll use is number 6, Knock Your Socks Off, who will be running late off of a good second on turf with Julian Leperoux. See turf horses, can carry their form to Churchill Downs. And one thing about Knock Your Socks Off is she gets a really hot jockey in Julian Leperoux. Going into, I think, Thursday's card, Julian Leperoux had won with like 4 of his last 7 starts at Churchill Downs. So he's been on fire here of late. So I'm going to play two $20 exactas in the Goldenrod. I'm going to play Hoosier Philly, the number 4 horse, over number 5 Black Forest and number 6 knock your socks off. So I've got a $40 wager, 4 over 5 and 6 in the straight exactas.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. If you really, really, really like a heavy favorite, you're not going to make any money betting on that horse to win or to place or to show, however you want to do it. But if you can hook them up with a couple of big long shots and exactas and trifectas and play those heavy as you're recommending, you can do pretty well. And let's see if that turns out for James Scully in the Goldenrod as he takes number 4, Hoosier Philly, over number 6, Knock Your Socks Off, and using number 5, Black Forest at 20. Black Forest is 20-1. Knock Your Socks Off is 12-1 on the morning line. So some good value plays there in the exacta pools, and we'll see if it works out. One final leg to get to before we get to our commercial break. That is the Grade 2 Kentucky Jockey Club. This one for the 2-year-old boys, and a much more, I think, contentious race according to the morning line than we see in the Goldenrod. How'd you see this one?
I'm a little bit dubious of the top contenders in this field. I mean, Curly Jack, merits respect off his effort in the Iroquois, but he just hasn't run back to the 93 Brisnet speed rating he earned in 3 starts back. It's not a positive sign when horses aren't, progressing on their speed numbers at the stakes level early in their career. And none of these rivals have run particularly fast on the main track. Lots of 70s and mid-80s speed numbers. Number 6, Freedom Trail, is a colt by Collected, right, who's a freshman sire. He won the Pacific Classic in 2017, was a dirt horse through and through. And John Terranova ran this colt first time out, going 2 turns on the turf at Belmont at Aqueduct in late September. Got up to win by a head at 13-1. Came back in the Awad Stakes a month later, and I really liked that performance, Mike. I thought he took a big step forward against much better competition, and he did it much more professionally to win by about a length. I thought it was a comfortable length in the end, and I think he's just got some class to him. The thing about Freedom Trail is damn, Freedom is a half-sister to multiple Grade 1 winner Opportunity, who won the Clark at Churchill Downs and all kinds of dirt races and was a dirt horse through. Her other sibling is multiple Grade 1 winning dirt juvenile filly Executive Privilege. So this pedigree to me is all dirt for Freedom Trail. He showed an affinity for turf, just he wanted to run him long. John Terranova did early on. He got those 2 efforts into him, and now he goes to the main track. And like I said, I think he's going to carry his form forward because he's not facing the toughest Kentucky Jockey Club field this year. So I got a little bit of a price in race number 11, number 6 Freedom Trail, 6-1 with Florent Giroux.
Yeah, great analysis and wonderful breakdown of that pedigree. Freedom Trail, 6-1 on the morning line, and could add some serious value to this week's TwinSpires Triple Play, provided by my good friend James Scully. And you can catch James as well, as I mentioned earlier, on the Brisnet.com call-in show every Thursday from 6 to 7 Eastern, right here on Sirius XM and on the Horse Racing Radio Network website. He joins Bobby Newman to take your phone calls every Thursday for a full hour. So make sure you mark that down and get ready to call in coming up next Thursday afternoon. All right, James, so just to recap, race number 4 at Churchill this afternoon, you'll go with number 11, Vava, who is 7-2 on the morning line. Race 10, the Goldenrod, you'll take number 4, Hoosier Philly, the even money favorite, but hook her up in a couple of value plays in there in the exacta pools too. And then race number 11, you'll go with number 6, Freedom Trail, who is 6-1 on the morning line, and potentially maybe even a little bigger price than that by the time the horses leave the starting gate.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's always great joining you, Mike, and I want to wish everybody, I hope everybody listening had a great Thanksgiving holiday, and best of luck with their wagers today and tomorrow on this sports-packed weekend. Some really good racing.
Going to be fantastic. James, appreciate it. All the best, my friend. Good luck at the windows.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, that is your TwinSpires Triple Play on this Saturday morning. Head over to TwinSpires.com to bet those 3 races however you would like. James gave you some suggestions, a guideline, if you will. Now you can follow that roadmap and hopefully have some success and cash some tickets later this afternoon. Coming up next, it is time for Kurt Becker to take you on his weekly stroll through racing history. And at 10:30, Dale Romans, Tim Wilkin will both be here for this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer. This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race the TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Adina Stallions set the gold standard, all number one in their category. Point of entry, the number one stallion by black type and greatest stakes winners standing in Canada.
A wild finish coming here, and point of entry. Oh, the classy point of entry would not be denied.
Shaman Ghost, the number one second crop sire standing in Canada.
It's Shaman Ghost, an overwhelming force in the last 16th of a mile. Shaman Ghost has beaten Midnight Storm.
Signature Red, the number one stallion by percentage of black type winners standing in Canada.
Signature Red won his second Highlander in a row.
And Silent Name, the number one stallion by percentage of black type performers standing in Canada. A list that includes Grade 1 winner Silent Poet.
Silent Poet in front. Admiralty Pier out the ground, but Silent Poet has won the Highlander Stakes.
Adina Stallions, setting the gold standard. Visit adinastallions.com.
Catholic Boy, one of only 3 American 3-year-old colts in history to win Grade 1s on both dirt and turf, including the Immortal Secretariat. A 6-time graded stakes winner from ages 2 to 4, he was the fastest 3-year-old of his crop over 10 furlongs. Now his first foals have arrived. Dual surface Grade 1 winner Catholic Boy, standing at Claiborne Farm.
This is jockey Julian Lopao, and you're listening to HRRN.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Hello, I'm Kurt Becker. Thanks for joining me as I take another stroll through racing history presented by Keeneland. Recently on Equine Forum, host Mike Penna asked trainer Dale Romans to name a horse for which he was thankful. Romans immediately answered Kitten's Joy. And with Kitten's Joy having passed away earlier this year, we decided to pause and reflect on the career of the late Eclipse champion. Foaled on May 8, 2001 at Ramsey Farm in Nicholasville, Kentucky, Kitten's Joy was a chestnut colt and a homebred for owners Kenneth and Sarah Ramsey. The name Kitten came from the fact the colt's mother was a mare named Kitten's First, and ultimately the name traced back to Kitten as a name of affection by which Ken Ramsey had referred to his wife early in their courtship. As for horses, Mr. Ramsey made no secret of the fact he wanted to win the Kentucky Derby and therefore wanted to race horses with an affinity for dirt. But Kitten's Joy was bred to run on grass. Given that his sire was Irish champion El Prado, his dam had won on turf, and his maternal grandsire Learfan had been a Group 1 winner on the legendary turf courses of Europe. Sent to a 2-year-olds in training sale in Florida in April of 2003, Kitten's Joy failed to meet his reserve of $100,000. Above all else, Ken Ramsey was a businessman, and in his estimation, Kitten's Joy was worth 6 digits, even if he was bred to race on the grass. Sent to the barn of trainer Dale Romans, Kitten's Joy would finish off the board on dirt in his debut before returning 2 starts later to break his maiden on the turf at Belmont Park. That victory would start a string of 5 consecutive wins and 8 wins in his next 9 starts. The story goes that early in 2004, Ramsey asked Hall of Fame jockey Jerry Bailey to work Kitten's Joy 6 furlongs on the dirt. Even though the colt had been winning races on the grass, Ramsey still held to the hope that maybe his rising superstar could still be a Kentucky Derby hopeful. But following the work, Bailey told Ramsey that Kitten's Joy had struggled and seemed exhausted. And to make sure there was no misunderstanding, Bailey bluntly added, "Do not put him on the dirt again." Ramsey heeded the advice, and he was soon to be handsomely rewarded. Heading to Arlington Park in August of 2004 for the track's International Festival of Racing, Kitten's Joy went to the post as the 4-5 favorite for the Secretariat Stakes at 1.25 miles on the turf. Bailey would be aboard, and it would be the colt's first try at the Grade 1 level. With a sweeping 4-wide move at the top of the stretch, Kitten's Joy won that afternoon in what one magazine called the standout performance of the festival. He won by 3 1/4 lengths on a weekend when Romans was celebrating his 38th birthday. As Bailey dismounted, he marveled at the colt's amazing turn of foot. In his next outing, Kitten's Joy went to Belmont Park for the Grade 1 Joe Hirsch Turf Classic Invitational. It would be his first time against older horses, and it would be his first time stretching to 1.5 miles. He would also have to deal with a yielding turf course, and his lone loss of the year had come on yielding ground. Despite all of those factors, Kitten's Joy went to the post as the second betting choice at odds of 2-1. Tom Durkin with the call.
Magistretti, who is in control, targeted now on the outside by Kitten's Joy, kicking Chris right there and behind, and Tycoon is ready to roll, and the field turns for home, and Magistretti now accelerating. Magistretti opens up, the lead is a length. Kitten's Joy set down for the drive, and here he comes now. Oh, and he's got plenty of run. Kitten's Joy taking the lead with an impressive turn of foot. Oh my! Kitten's Joy is just blowing Magistretti away in Tycoon. Oh, this is a very good 3-year-old. Kitten's Joy wins by 3 emphatic lengths.
With John Velasquez in the irons, Kitten's Joy had won the Joe Hirsch and had been sufficiently impressive to evoke a memorable stretch call from Durkin, as well as dazzling media members who began talking about the colt as possible champion 3-year-old male and maybe even horse of the year. In fact, several folks seem to agree that a victory in the upcoming Breeders' Cup Turf at Lone Star Park would likely bring Kitten's Joy all of those accolades. But it was not meant to be. Kitten's Joy would finish second to Better Talk Now at the Breeders' Cup as the odds-on favorite after a difficult journey over another yielding turf course. Smarty Jones would win the Eclipse as best 3-year-old male. Ghost Sapper would be the horse of the year. But all was not lost, as Kitten's Joy would earn the Eclipse as the nation's top turf male. Kitten's Joy would retire the following year, having won or placed in 13 of his 14 career starts with earnings of $2 million. As a stallion, he would become a 2-time champion sire on the general list, and he would be North America's leading turf sire for 6 consecutive seasons, from 2013 through 2018. Kitten's Joy died on July 15 of this year at the age of 21. We recall the words of his trainer, who once said, quote, "Kitten's Joy was incredibly game, and he showed the heart of a champion," end quote. Please join me again next week when I take another stroll through racing history presented by Keeneland. For HRRN, I'm Kurt Becker.
Another fantastic story from Kurt Becker. I tell you every week, nobody weaves a story together like Kurt Becker, and my thanks to Keeneland for making those segments possible. If you missed any of Kurt's Stroll Through Racing history segments over the past year or so, you can go back and listen to all of them on our website, horseracingradio.net. They're there for you on a very special podcast page for Stroll Through Racing history. When I come back, Dale Romans, Tim Wilkin. It is this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer. This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Curling, the classic sire.
They're off in the Derby City Disdain. An obligatory win.
And it's gotta be Clariere in the Tip Stakes. Nest, much the best. She won by better than 10 lengths in this coaching club. American Oaks, Cody's Wish with the upset in the Fargo. And Malathon has won the Personal Ensign Stakes.
Curling, standing at Hill and Dale.
Hey everyone, it's the Baron with this week's North of the Border Report presented by Woodbine Entertainment. Hale, a son of Accelerate, goes for his third win in as many starts in the Grade 3 Gray Stakes, part of Woodbine's Saturday card that also features the Grade 3 Mazarine. Trained by Darwin Banach, Hale arrives at the mile in the 16th Tapeta race for 2-year-olds off a strong debut on October 2nd, and this equally impressive encore in the Display Stakes on November 5th.
Hal moves to second. Hank Ollie dipping out. Chisler around the outside and firing bullets coming home up the rail as they come down towards the final quarter. Keen Flatter is on the extreme outside, but now Hal has a real shot at the leader. Ticket Tape Home turns under what is Hands and Heels riding, joined by Hal, who's under the whip and now asked to run. Ticket Tape Home trying to accelerate. Hal's made a real bid on the outside and has come up to level. They're well ahead of Firing Bullets, and Hal has got the lead. Ticket Tape Home on the inside, trying to rally back. Hal narrowly. Ticket Tape Home not done with. Hal in front. Hal holding out, and Hal has won the display. A neck.
Banach continues to marvel at the maturity of his young star in the morning and afternoon. And following his 5-furlong work over the Tapeta on November 19th, Hale is in good order heading into the gray. The Mazarine has attracted Honor D. Lady, a Dark Bay daughter of Honor Code. After 2 pleasing results at Gulfstream, including a maiden-breaking score last time out, Honor D. Lady will test out the Toronto Oval in her 3rd career start. Trained by Saffie Joseph Jr. for Final Furlong Farm, the Dark Bay romped to a 7.5-length victory on the Hallandale Synthetic on October 7th. Honor D. Lady seems to have taken well to her new surroundings and will have Edgar Zayas in the irons later today. First post for the 11-race card is 1:20 p.m. And that's your North of the Border report for this Saturday morning. For more updates and racing information, visit Woodbine.com or follow along on both Twitter and Instagram at WoodbineTB.
Hey, it's Corey Lannery. You're listening to the Horse Racing Radio Network.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
But they're coming to the top of the short stretch, and here comes Forte. Cave Rock has the lead. National Treasure between horses. Forte, and then Blazing Sevens goes to 4th on the grandstand side. Forte takes clear aim at Cave Rock. These two going at it, final furlong of the juvenile. Forte on the outside, Cave Rock on the inside. Forte to the lead. Forte, Iran Ortiz Jr. to win the FanDuel Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Cave Rock second, National Treasure third, Blazing Sevens was fourth in 1 minute 43.06 seconds.
The remarkable Kurt Becker with the call of this year's Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and juvenile winner Forte opening as the 10-1 betting favorite over impressive maiden winner Extra Anejo in the second Kentucky Derby future wager pool. Which of those 2-year-olds do you trust most? Plus, was racing better when handicap races were a part of it? And will Hoosier Filly run her record to a perfect 3 for 3 in today's Goldenrod, or should she be on upset alert? We're going to discuss those topics and much, much more coming up on this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer with trainer Dale Romans and turf rider Tim Wilkin. It's all presented by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program in the College of Business, and it all starts just 30 seconds from right now.
Learn the business of horses in the world's only accredited equine business program, the University of Louisville Equine Business Program. The University of Louisville has a legacy of excellence educating and developing industry leaders for over 35 years. Classes are taught by industry experts in state-of-the-art facilities located in the heartland of America's equine industry. The University of Louisville Equine Business Program. When it comes to horses, we mean business. For more information, visit business.louisville.edu/equine.
Well, appropriate that Kurt Becker was doing the voiceover for that U of L business program commercial, and appropriate that we heard from him to start this show, because our very first topic involves the second Kentucky Derby future wager pool, which opened on Thursday with Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner Forte listed as the 10-1 favorite over impressive maiden winner Extra Anejo, who opened as the second choice at odds of 15-1. Guys, which of those 2-year-olds do you trust most looking ahead to next year's Kentucky Derby? Timmy?
I don't trust either of them. It's just so early to think that we might be staring at the winner of the Kentucky Derby in, a few days after we ate turkey. Start with Forte. He's obviously he's a more seasoned horse. He's got 5 stars, 4 wins, 3 of them grade 1s, but all 3 of those grade 1 wins, the the Juvenile, the Breeders' Futurity, and the Hopeful. He wasn't favored in any of them. He was second choice in the Juvenile, second choice in the Breeders' Futurity, and fourth choice in the Hopeful. And, he won the Hopeful by 3 lengths. He won the Futurity by a neck, the Juvenile by 1.5. He's tested, yes. But do I necessarily think that horse is going to be the horse comes the first Saturday in May? Maybe he will, but for right now, I think not. And the Externejo, very impressive, won in that debut by 9.5 lengths for Steve. And, the whole team, the Steve and the Winchell people, they're gushing about this horse. And, well, they should after that debut. But off of one start, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna take it. I'm going to be very happy to think that we haven't seen the Derby winner yet.
Yeah, there's a reason that all of the 3-year-olds are 3 to 5, and so I'm lucky enough to have one on there, Cyclone Mischief, which I always figure I have 2. I've got Cyclone Mischief, and I've got one that's not on there, so I got one of all the others. And it's hard this early to be picked. The best thing about future wagers, in my opinion, is bragging rights if you have to hit it, that you knew it before everybody else. It's really not a good play, but it's fun. It's something to talk about. But I don't think I'd be betting my bankroll on either one of these horses or any future book at this time, unless I just wanted something to brag about later.
Well, Dale, give us the skinny on your horses. Should we start saving our money for them?
No, I think this is a really good horse. I'm going to run this weekend or today at Churchill with Cyclone Mischief. I think it's a very talented horse. But there's so many good ones out there, and there's so much attrition that goes along the way that you just got to keep them all together. I mean, it's good to have something to work with, and I'm fortunate enough to right now he's stepping to the forefront.
Do you get excited this early for a horse, a 2-year-old that might be on the trail next year? Is it wait and see kind of?
What I get excited about is the training and the build up and the fact you've got something to work with. It's like having a great piece of clay and you keep trying to mold it. I mean, it may never come together, but it's good to have it. I've gone into the first of the year with knowing I didn't have a good piece of clay. I had nothing to mold, but it's fun to have one that you can start talking about strategizing and what to do and start getting worried about keeping them healthy. And, all that stuff's it's a big part of why we all do what we do.
Well, I know what I'm getting you for Christmas now, Dale.
A big piece of clay?
Play-Doh.
Right, Play-Doh. I love Play-Doh. You can't go wrong with Play-Doh.
Dale, you bring up Dale brings up a very interesting point here, guys. Dale, you talk about the future wagers being a way to kind of brag to your friends. If you get it right, you can say, hey, I got that horse back in the end of November at 30-1 or whatever the case might be. We see this in all sports, right? The future wagers are a big part of it. I bet 100 to win on the Steelers to win the division, to win the AFC Championship, and to win the Super Bowl this year. I'm going to be ripping up all 3 of those tickets, and I'm going to look like those were sucker bets. But, Timmy, how do you see him? Is a future wager a sucker bet, or is it a good investment?
Well, I think you can rip up those Steeler tickets right now.
Yeah.
I think it's a sap bet myself because, it's like betting blind because you don't know what's going to happen down the line with these horses. And, I know only of one group of people that made a bunch of money on a future bet, and that was the Funny Side people. When they bet Funny Side, I even forget what the odds were, but they were really high, and they cleaned up, and God bless them, good for them. But, for the overall, I'm thinking I just think it's the dumbest bet that we have out there because it's a blind bet. You don't know what's going to happen. You could bet that horse today, and tomorrow you might never run again. So, to me, if you're going to bet it, yeah, it's great to swing for the fences now, and you might get a huge price on one of these horses. And, if this horse continues to progress, obviously his future bet price is going to go down in the other 5 pools. So, to me, I'm keeping my money in my wallet.
It's not a real gambler's bet, but it's a fun thing. And I always say in this game, we market it all wrong. It's not about winning money in this business. It's about being right. 99% of people that play horses don't need the money, but they need that victory lap and going around telling everybody, I figured out that formula. No different with future wagers. You're not getting near true odds, I wouldn't think, of actually making it to the Kentucky Derby and winning. But it's a fun thing to have out there. It gets people started talking about the Derby early, and if you hit, hey, you're the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah, it comes back to the core of what this game was all about to begin with, right? My horse is faster than your horse. I'm a better handicapper than you are. I got it right and you didn't. I mean, that's at the very core of what horse racing was all about when it started. That was it, and it continues that way, and it's a great point that Dale brings up there too. All right, topic number 2. The fall high weight later today at Aqueduct is a throwback to a time when horses routinely carried high imposts in handicap races, which are now pretty much a distant memory. So was the sport better when handicap races were a part of it, and should racing consider carting more races like the fall high weight that we're going to see later today? Dale, why don't you kick it off?
First of all, I love the fall highway. Always been one of my favorite races. The first greatest stake I ever won was the fall highway, I think 95 or 96. And it's always been a special. I always thought it was a special race. I loved handicap racing, and I think it did a lot for the sport. It not only made parity in the race, but it also gave an opportunity for great horses to do a great thing, which is carry a lot of weight and still dominate. The Forgo and Kelso, the eras, that's what all those guys used to always talk about, is the weight they carried when they won the races, Dr. Thayer. And, it's just they've gotten away from it. I don't like it. It also gave horses that needed a weight break to step up and have a chance to win a stake. I love handicap racing. I understand why they're going away. There's always controversy around the handicap. It didn't matter what race it was. Somebody was always complaining about having too much weight or somebody else having not enough weight. It was left up to the handicappers. But I even think that was fun. I always liked all of that stuff. I wish there were more handicap races.
There's something kind of sexy about the handicap horses, the horses that, are lugging, sometimes up more than 20 pounds more than their opponents. And then they would, and this is going back to the glory, those old glory days when these horses would still win. And, they became endeared to the racing public, the fans. They fell in love with these horses because they, winning a race is one thing. It's hard enough to do that, but with that much extra weight on their backs than their opponents, it really, really made for, it popularized a lot of these horses, and they became, as time went on, they became like legends. And I can see why they don't do it anymore. I mean, racing secretaries have a tough enough job as it is to assign these weights. But to go back to the throwback days when they did it, it was really kind of a glorious time, I thought.
Yeah, everybody thinks about
glamorous about it.
Everybody thinks about Dr. Thayer and some of the names you guys already mentioned, Forgo and Seabiscuit, and even Damascus for that matter. You think about Affirm, though. Affirm carried 132 pounds in 1979 when he won the Hollywood Gold Cup, and even Cigar more recently in 1996, he carried 130 pounds in back-to-back races that year. So we've seen it a little bit more recently, and we see it with the fall high weight, but it's still not the same as what we used to have with the handicap races.
I mean, with Kelso, when he during his career, he carried 130 or more pounds 24 times and won 13 of them. I still love the line of the legendary turf writer Joe Hirsch. He wrote that once upon a time there was a horse named Kelso. He said, but only once. I mean, that said it all about Kelso. I mean, that horse was just an iron horse, and the other ones like Forgo and Dr. Thayer, Damascus. We'll never see the likes of those kind of horses again because there's the horses face it. They don't carry added weight like that multiple times during their career anymore.
Nope. It's a bygone era.
Yep, it really is. And I do think, personally, I think it was better when racing had those handicap races as part of it. All right, moving on to this week's...
Can I ask one question to Dale on this? Dale,
shoot, go ahead, Timmy.
Being a trainer, a horse carrying a lot more weight, how much of a burden is that on an animal?
You know who told me the best line about that? I think it's a big burden for a horse a lot too. But Steve Asmussen told me the best line. He said when he was a bug boy in light and riding, and he would work horses for his father, he never lost a work. When he gained weight and quit riding and he got heavier, he never won another work. I thought that's pretty telling. And, he's a stickler for weight. And I think that it matters, especially going long in those handicap races. The last thing to say about this, all sports need parity, and that was another way of giving parity. You would have gotten more horses to run against a horse like Flightline if they're carrying 118, he's carrying 132. And it would have been interesting to see if you loaded him up with weight, he still won. But like we said,
can you put more weight on a horse during a work?
No, I don't. I like light riders during work for safety issues for the horse. I think that it's a lot easier on them you get a lot more done with a lot less stress if you use a light rider. So as everybody knows, Tammy works 90% of mine. She weighs 92 pounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. How about this? The Hall of Fame filly, Thayer, won the fall high weight in both 1969 and 1970. When she won it in 1970, she carried 140 pounds. She gave up 19 pounds to the runner-up. In this year's race, you have Factor It In and Runnin' Son of a Gun, who are co-high weights, both carrying 132 pounds. They're only giving up 9 pounds to the horse carrying the lowest weight in the race, 123, and that's 30-1 long shot Bezos. So you can't even compare the fall high weight from what we saw back in the late 60s and early 70s to what it is today.
Right.
No, you
different
can't.
game, different era.
You're right.
Yep, whole different era. All right, moving on to this week's edition of Right or Wrong. To welcome in our good friend Nick Zito to help us with this segment, I will throw out a couple of topics, and Dale and Tim will tell me if those statements are right or wrong.
Yeah, right or wrong. Am I right? What do you think? Right or wrong?
All right, the first one, Super Saver won the Kentucky Jockey Club in 2009 and then returned to Churchill Downs the next spring to win the Kentucky Derby. If I were to tell you guys that next year's Kentucky Derby winner is among the 9 horses entered in this year's Kentucky Jockey Club, Tim, would I be right or wrong?
What do you think? Right or wrong?
I say wrong. Super Saver won the Derby in 2009. And I think, there's been 4 others that have come out of that race to win the Derby, the last being Cannonade in 74. I mean, there's been some nice horses that have won that race. Don't get me wrong. I mean, horses like Smile Happy last year was a nice horse, but never really got to show what he could do moving forward. Keep Me in Mind won at Repent, the Cliff's Edge, Captain Steve. There's some good horses that have won this race. But to say that the winner of the Derby is going to come out of this race, that's an impossible statement to make because it just doesn't happen, and I don't see it happening this year.
Yeah, Timmy's 100% wrong. Cyclone Mischief.
See, I just threw up the softball, Dale.
You did. You pitched me the softball. I might be a little biased. I like to think I'm not biased, but I'm going to say that Nick's 100% right. The Derby winner comes out of there, and I can drop the mic next year.
We're going to hold this one on tape, too, so that when Cyclone Mischief wins the Kentucky Derby, we're going to replay that. Dale calling it here on November 26th. That's fantastic. Cyclone Mischief, a maiden winner last time out. We'll see if Cyclone Mischief can give Dale that victory and move on to the Kentucky Derby. All right, topic number 2. 6 of the 9 runners in the Kentucky Jockey Club have at least 4 starts coming into today's race. Cyclone Mischief, not one of them. Giving young horses more racing experience at 2 is the best approach if you want your horses ready for the first Saturday in May. Is that statement right or wrong?
Yeah, right or wrong. Am I right?
Dale?
It used to be right, but, we've kind of rewritten all the rules and formulas for winning the Kentucky Derby in the last 15 years. I think it's good to have a nice little foundation in them, but, we've seen lately that the horses that come on in the last 2 rounds of the point system are the ones that seem to be the real contenders. So I'd say it's having a little foundation is good. You don't want to overdo it.
Well, it's to me, again, I'm not a trainer. I've covered the sport for 40 years, so I've seen a lot. Obviously, I don't know what goes into training a horse, but it seems to me the young horses still need time to develop their muscular, their skeletal areas. And to me, I think that too much racing as a 2-year-old can just catch up with them. I get the thing about Dale saying about the foundation, but you also want to have a real sound horse. And face it, I think horses are babied more now than they used to be. They used to run a lot more, even at all ages. So I think the way that the game is now, Forte's like 5 starts already in his 2-year-old. He had 5 starts in his 2-year-old year. But to me, I think that I'd rather see these horses develop more and be able to have their campaigns gear up when they're 3.
All right, that is right or wrong. Next week, we are going to invite Nick Zito to join us on this program. So Nick will be able to do that live for us if he's able to make it. We'll keep you posted on that. Stay tuned to our HRRN website and the newsletters for updates on next week's show. Okay, one final topic before we get to our West Point of the Week, and that involves the passing of trainer Angel Penna Jr., who died Tuesday at the age of 74. Over the years, many people have asked me if we were related because of the same last name. We were not, and regrettably, I never did have the opportunity to meet Angel Penna Jr., the son of Hall of Fame trainer Angel Penna Sr. He settled 586 winners, including several Grade 1 winners, and although he never won a Triple Crown race or a Breeders' Cup event, he most certainly had an impact on so many people in the sport. Tim, I'll come to you first. How should racing remember Angel Penna Jr.?
Well, I knew him. I mean, I met him more than once on the backstretches through my travels, and the thing I always remember about Angel Penna is just what a gentleman he was. Always polite, always spoke to you, and he just seemed to always be in a fairly good mood, and that's kind of a rare thing about horse trainers because that's it's an up and down business. But he was, and he's a good trainer. I mean, he trained horses like A Phenomenon. He trained, which is one of my favorite horses back in the day, and it's sad that at 74 is still fairly young. It's sad that he's not with us anymore. But I just remember him all the time on the backstretch being accommodating, polite, and just a real gentleman kind of guy. And it's sad. I mean, he's not gonna. He'll go down as a guy that I think everybody liked.
Yeah, I know him well. He was a class act. His father was one of the first people to come up from South America and train. And people may not remember he trained for the Phippses, so he worked tightly with them. And he trained a little bit different than the rest of us. I think a lot of people learned stuff from his father and from Angel Jr., but just a kind person, a class act. And he always reminded me of Ricky Ricardo. He was always dressed as nice. Didn't matter if he was working in the barn or going to the races, and he was kind to everybody he crossed paths with, and a cool customer. I always used to tell me he was an international playboy. He was just a cool guy that had an aura about him of class and dignity, and he'll be greatly missed.
Yeah, very well said. He will be greatly missed by so many people in the sport of thoroughbred racing. All right, guys, it is time now to give you each one opportunity to make a final point. It is the West Point of the Week, and it's all presented by our friends at West Point Thoroughbreds. We will remind people that they can experience the lifestyle of thoroughbred racehorse ownership with the gold standard in racing partnerships for over 30 years. It is indeed West Point Thoroughbreds, and all you have to do, folks, is text HORSE to 66866. If you want to learn more about owning racehorses, that's HORSE to 66866, and you can learn about ownership with the best. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Message and data rates may apply. All right, guys, time for one parting shot. What is your West Point of the Week? Dale, let's kick it off with you this week, my friend.
Today's one of my favorite days in racing, 2-year-old day at Churchill Downs. And it was a concept that was created by the late Donnie Richardson, another great man that passed too early, and Doug Bradar, which we've talked about a couple of times on the show. When he was racing secretary at Churchill Downs, they came up with 2-year-old day, Tomorrow Stars, whatever you want to call it. I think it's a great day of racing. It's a lot of fun. You get to see them run on grass, turf, dirt, sprint, long, stakes, allowance, maiden. You get a lot of 2-year-olds, and I think it's done a lot for Kentucky racing to grow our 2-year-old population. And it's a good day. Everybody should take time today and watch all the future stars.
Well, I'm going to just vault into the future a little bit and let everyone know that the New York Racing Association has put out their dates for next year, and Saratoga starts on July 13th next year. Summer can't get here quick enough. And one last point, I hope with all my heart that a cyclone hits Churchill Downs later today.
Thank you, Timmy.
You stole my closing line, Timmy. You stole my line. I'll just say this. Good luck to Dale Romans today and the Albaugh family and all the owners involved with Cyclone Mischief. Good luck, Dale.
Thank you, bud.
Yep.
All right. If you have a topic you want to hear Dale and Tim debate, all you have to do is email it to me, Mike@horseracingradio.net, and I will go ahead and work it in for you over the weeks ahead. This is I Ask, They Answer. It's all presented by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program and the College of Business, and I will be back with more. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network. I'm here with Joe Brown Nicholson of Nicholson Insurance Agency. Joe, how do you value a horse for insurance?
Well, Mike, it's easy to value a horse when purchased out of a public auction. The insured value would simply be the auction price. But insuring homebreds can be a little more involved.
How so?
Well, factors such as a stud fee, conformation, pedigree, sales and race records of siblings, even popularity of the stallion, all come into play.
How closely do you work with owners in determining a horse's value?
Well, the owner has a pretty good idea of the horse's value, so generally it's just a matter of agreeing to the request and having the policy issued.
For all your equine and general insurance needs, including farm owners, liability, homeowners, auto, and more, contact Joe Brown Nicholson at nicholsoninsurance.com or call 859-224-7080. That's 859-224-7080. Nicholson Insurance Agency. Life is good. 9 wins from 11 career starts, including 4 Grade 1s. WinStar President and CEO Elliott Walden knows he's special.
You know, to have a horse of this caliber, it's always exciting. There's not many horses that I've been around that have his ability. You know, he just breathes a different air.
They're coming past the 16th fold. It's Life is Good. And this colt is incredible.
Life is Good is looking good. Life is Good and Irad Ortiz Jr. They ran him off their feet in the Pegasus.
And they're coming for the finish. It is Life is Good still in front. Life is Good is the winner by 2 lengths. Life is Good the leader with a 16th to the finish. And Life is Good is going to win this Woodward. Life is Good by 1.5 lengths at the end.
Life is Good, the fastest son of Into Mischief, coming to WinStar.
Did you receive a call or message that mentioned Social Security and demanded immediate action? Did the caller know your Social Security number or other personal information and tell you that your Social Security number had been used in connection with the crime? Did you feel worried that your Social Security number might be suspended, your bank account might be frozen or seized, or you could be arrested? That is not the Social Security Administration. Social Security will not threaten you, demand your personal information, or instant payment. Email or text you pictures or documents, or use a real government official's name to gain your trust. Social Security does not accept payments by gift card, prepaid debit card, internet currency, or by mailing cash. Criminals use these forms of payment because they are hard to trace. Do not be fooled. Hang up. Ignore them. Report this criminal activity to the Social Security Administration Office of the Inspector General at oig.ssa.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Okay, this is Carl Nasker, and I listen to HRRN.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Onto the final turn they go. Cyclone Mischief puts a head in front. Permafrost is still there toward the inside. Gap of 2, My Imagination third. They're at the quarter pole. King Doro is fourth up on the outside, followed by Seeking Unity. And then Wadsworth, who is still running 8 lengths from the lead. Top of the short stretch, Cyclone Mischief has opened up by 3.5 lengths into the stretch now. King Doro challenging for second. My Imagination is right to the inside of that one. And My Imagination is trying to chase down Cyclone Mischief, but running out of time, and there's still 3.5 lengths, 4 lengths between them. Cyclone Mischief and Joe Talamo just drawing off down the short stretch. Cyclone Mischief to win it. It was My Imagination across the line in second, followed by King Doro in third.
Well, as you just heard, Dale Romans hoping that Cyclone Mischief puts in a similar effort later today in the Kentucky Jockey Club when he won by 5 1/4 lengths in that maiden-breaking win at Keeneland on October 19th. Our very own Kurt Becker had the call for you, and should be a really good race. The Kentucky Jockey Club, much more balanced than what we see in the Goldenrod, where you have Hoosier Philly as the odds-on favorite in there, even money on the morning line. Much different story in the Kentucky Jockey Club, so no reason to think that Cyclone Mischief can't take another step forward in just his third career start. We'll see if Dale can be heading to the winner's circle later today. We do wish him, again, the best of luck, but that is a very competitive group set to go in the Kentucky Jockey Club. Race 11 later today at Churchill Downs. Don't forget that the December issue of Blood Horse Magazine includes a recap of Flightline's record-breaking Breeders' Cup Classic, followed by breeding information for all 2022 Breeders' Cup World Championships. Download a copy now from the Blood Horse Magazine app via the App Store or Google Play, or you can subscribe today and receive a 2023 Blood Horse calendar, which is a $24.95 value. And it's all absolutely free by going to bloodhorse.com/winter special. That's bloodhorse.com/winter special. Plus, included in your subscription to Blood Horse Magazine is a free Blood Horse Plus membership, which is a $50 value. bloodhorse.com/winter special. My thanks to all of our guests for being with me here this morning. It has been a busy program. We have covered a lot of ground. My thanks to Kurt Becker for his stroll through racing history, Dale and Tim, and James Scully for the TwinSpires Triple Play. And, of course, Senator Damon Thayer for being with me as well with some really interesting conversation in the second hour of the program. If you missed any portion, head back to our website, horseracingradio.net. You can listen to the podcast anytime that suits you, and you can do that on every major podcast platform. Don't forget to follow us on social media as well, at HRRN on Twitter, Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook. For my producer, Lee Delapina, in our Lexington studio, for Chauncey handling our social media, I'm Mike Penna. Just win a game. Go Steelers.